06-22 in Town Council Chambers on March 15th. Before we start, let's call the roll. Do we have present Councillor Pillsbury?
Present.
Do we have Councillor Fournier?
Here.
Councillor Lawrence?
Here.
Councillor Daniele? Councillor Bradley?
Here.
Vice Chair Egan is excused, and Chair Dan Pilch is here. Our first order of business is to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. 1/7 of our meeting is done. Second order of business is to waive the reading of the minutes of meeting number 05-22 held on March 1st, 2022, and to accept the minutes as printed.
So moved. Second.
That was fast. So I think that was Councillor Fournier and Councillor Lawrence, or the other way around. Trying to help out our secretary here. Any comment, questions, corrections, additions, edits? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the minutes as printed?
Aye.
Any opposed? So that's, we got 6-0 with one excused. All right, I have only 2 announcements. Things are moving lightning fast tonight. 2 announcements, the first of which is something that we're going to talk about in a minute. Just a reminder that we have a Downtown Vision open house on April 9th here at Town Hall, hopefully on the lawn if the weather's nice. There is a long URL, but if you go to freeportdowntown.me soon, you'll be able to register there. And the only other announcement is that the Public Works Department has still posted roads since February 28th. A posted road guide is available on the Public Works page of the town website. So we are now on our 4th order of business out of 7. Good. This is our information exchange. This is the fun part of the meeting where we get to talk. Do any councilors have any information they'd like to exchange? Let's start at the far end and come this way. Councilor Pillsbury.
Thank you. Just wanted to update everyone. The Winslow Park Committee met, and the 2 items of note are that the ramp and playground projects are moving ahead. They've received bids. It looks like for the ramp, the bid has been
recording in progress.
And the work should be done in May.
Great.
Great.
Properties are unposted by then. And the playground, I think there's consensus. Neil's doing a little bit more work, but we should, well, that's kind of awkward. It should be done in spring as well. And they're also considering making a donation form for the park, so.
Nice. Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Councillor Bradley.
I'd like to report that there is progress on the Island Rover, that the launch plans have been reviewed and commented upon, and a process for continuing proposed and underway, and I'm going to predict against all odds that by the next council meeting I will have a recommendation to the council.
Awesome. Thanks for moving that forward.
Well, if you call that movement, I'm pushing.
It's more movement than we had last year. Any other information to exchange? I do have a reminder that tomorrow night is a workshop between the council and the project review board. It starts at 5 o'clock, 5 o'clock to 6:30. And that's here in council chambers. So hopefully most or all of you can attend. The other thing, schedule-wise, is that we have on our calendar a meeting on, well, first we have a meeting on March 29th to talk about the downtown vision before the open house. And then we had scheduled a meeting after on April 12th to discuss the results of the open house. That meeting, it's been recommended to shift that 2 weeks forward to April 26th so that the principal has more time to produce the report. So we have something to to respond to as opposed to reviewing what we just saw on April 9th. Yes, sir.
That would work excellent for me since I'll be out of the country on the 9th, so.
Oh, so it would work better for you if
It
we
would.
shifted. Okay. Mhm. Perfect.
Question?
Yes.
Is the only time that we, the ultimate hand raisers on the plan, will see it is on the 29th? Is the first time we'll see it?
So, principles behind schedule.
Okay.
We were supposed to have a draft by now
Okay.
to share. We don't have one.
Okay.
So they're coming on the 29th, and they'll be here in the afternoon working with the project team on edits. It'll be in sort of draft form at that point, in text form. So it's
The
not
first
gonna
time
be
they'll have it is the 29th.
First time we're going to see it. First time
Okay,
you're going to see
fair
it will
enough.
be the 29th.
Thank you.
And then the public sees it on the 9th, and then we're back here on the April 26th, and then we have May 3rd as our tentative adoption. So since that's a public calendar, I would propose that I'll make a motion to adjust the town council meeting schedule to remove the council workshop on April 12th and add one on April 26th.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Any questions, discussion on that? So that was Bradley and Fournier. All right, all in favor of adjusting the schedule? Any opposed? That's all unanimous, 6-0. Thank you for that. That's.
Mr. Chair, there's
yes.
nothing listed on the 29th right now on the town calendar
Oh, on the website?
of March, yes.
Madam Secretary, would you be kind enough?
Oh, is it April
No,
29th?
no,
Am I
it's
on-
March 29th, but it's not there either, so. Yeah, there should be a workshop on March 29th, and now a workshop on April 26th. I'm just looking at the other ones. We have a regular workshop next Tuesday, the 22nd, which is on the calendar, and that's just the regular boards and committees workshop.
Those workshops on 29th of March and 26th are with principal.
Yeah, the 29th, they'll be here in person. So the March one, they'll be here in person. The April one, they may or may not, depending on their schedules. If they're not here in person, they'll Zoom in. And those workshops are exclusively to talk about the downtown plan. Both of them are, yeah. So we have the whole meeting to do that. If you guys decide you don't need the second one because you're happy with the workshop and the open house and want to move straight to the third, we can do that. But for now, we're keeping them both. Cool. We have a special guest tonight that I think, two special guests. We have 4 special guests who actually took the time to come to a council meeting, so thank you. But I know Mary wanted to introduce our new executive director for the Freeport Economic Development Corporation.
So first, I just want to say thank you. We had an extraordinary group of candidates that we received for this. I had 37 candidates from all over the United States, some local, some away. Unbelievably good candidates. This was not an easy decision. And I had an interviewing team that included the town, Caroline Pelletier, Dan from the council, Tawny Whitney from the chamber, and 6 of my board members. I've done a lot of interviewing in my life with IDEX, and I have never, ever, ever, ever had a candidate that every single one of my interviewers said, yes, they're the one. So congratulations. This is Brett Richardson. Brett brings with him great experiences that helped us to make that decision, that are a combination of he's had his own business, so he knows what it's like to start up his own business and run his own business. John Egan knew him from his time at Coastal Enterprises, where he was consulting with other small businesses to help them start up. And then for the last 3 years, he's been with the town of Lisbon doing a lot of innovations and renovations there. So he also knows how to do, guess what? He knows how to do grants and fundraising. Aren't we happy? Yes. Which also, we know that we're going to need to do that with all the downtown revisioning coming soon. So we're super happy. I'm super happy to have him here. Maybe you won't have to look at me every 2 weeks from now going forward. So, Brett, thank you. I just want to welcome you.
Yeah, appreciate it. I've had a very warm welcome here. Very excited to be here, and I was excited to come before I landed just by what I saw and heard, but to hear it now in person, I'm even more excited. So I appreciate the opportunity. I look forward to working with you.
Thanks, Brett. Welcome to Freeport. I'm sure your plate is full because I know it was full before, long before you got here. It was full of stuff to do. So I'm sure Mary is thrilled to have some help because she was taking a lot of work on her shoulders, and it's I do want to recognize that Mary kind of stepped in the interim when we had no executive director and performed her role as president of the board and executive director, and then some, with a smile on her face every time, all without getting paid. So thank you for that, Mary. I appreciate that, and I know the whole town does as well.
Here, here.
Last call for information exchange. Any updates on the downtown project you want to share tonight, or
One thing that I would
can you come up to the podium?
I know that, darn it. Hi, I'm Mary.
Well, it's all right. She wants to leave it.
I do this for personal reasons for my family, so it's not about you. On the downtown revisioning, the thing that I'd like to remind everyone is when we do have those public meetings, it's great for you to come and be there. When we did those last time, there's an amazing energy and joy in having people discussing things together that you don't necessarily get when you're just looking at them online. So please, when we have that town hall visit, I'd love to have you there and participating. It also helps you as counselors to hear what people are having to say, hear what they disagree with, hear what they agree with, but it also gives you an opportunity to ask questions because, of course, ultimately, we're going to be asking for monies from the town to do some of the things that we want to do. And, of course, one of the things that we have said all along, and the reason that we chose Principal, is that they're so good at getting collaboration across the community and voices at the table. But would love to have you hear that, too.
Thank you for that. And I second what you say about Principal Group. They've been amazing, and so has FEDC and the team at collecting information from the community. That's been astounding. My sense is it's not enough. And I only say that not because I don't think what we got is enough. We got plenty to work on, and the ideas are amazing. But in my district meeting and in my conversations as a result of the district meeting, I'm astounded by how many people know very little about what we've all done. And I said that at the last meeting, and everybody nods, and that makes sense, right? But we got to do something about it. I don't know what it is, but somehow we've got to get the sum and substance out in a way that it can be read by people who aren't on the internet, aren't social media savvy, haven't been following the bubble as it bounces along. And if that's an article in the Forecaster, okay, it may have to be something we pay for. It may be that once the Principal Group report comes in, they'll do it on their own. But if soon after the Principal Group report comes, they don't do something, that is start interviewing us and finding out what we're doing, so they're going to do a big article so we know what the town thinks. I don't think we know what the town thinks right now. I think we know what the interested part of the town thinks.
Sure.
And that's not a criticism. I mean, it's been
No, it's just
amazing.
the way it
It's
is.
just an observation that there's a lot of people that I believe should know what's going on, don't. I'll be quiet again.
And thank you. I appreciate that. There are two things that we're doing. One, we've got permission from Shulsky, the owners of, I think it's 54 Main Street. They are going to allow us to put that entire empty storefront with all the downtown revisioning things. That is going to go up, I think, this week. They're designing what it's going to look like, and we're going to put as many materials as we can up there. Because when we get people who come inside and look at these materials, we only know what we see, and so by seeing these things, it makes it easier for folks. So we're going to put those up there. What we've also been, we're starting back up the newsletters with Principal again as well to get newsletters back to folks. What I would also say to you all is if we send them to you and you send them on to your constituencies, because the interesting thing is we have the newsletters that are going out to anybody who's registered. You're right, not everybody is registered. We also put it on Friends of Freeport that goes out to a very large amount of folks, but I know that there's still some people that we're missing. So we can print those newsletters and put them in places like Bow Street and in the town hall to help get them into printed hands. But you're right, if we need to do an article in the Forecaster where we put in some of this verbiage that we're doing, there's no reason we cannot do that, because we do want people to know more about this. As you know from the time that I have spent on this dais for so long, that's one of my focuses.
Yeah, there's two different kinds of people in town, those that want to be involved and take responsibility for the planning, and the others who want to react.
Right.
And we're almost ready to have something out there that
Right.
would give people a chance to react to it. And
Yeah.
it would, I think, if
Yeah.
they saw what's really on the plate.
I think it's an interesting challenge for us too, because we're trying to do these public events where we ask people to come in and see. And, you know, last time I think we had 20 or 25 people that came the day we had the open house here. So I think I would say encourage your constituents to come. We would love to have them come, even if they have a difference of opinion. Differences of opinions make us stronger and better because then we think about them. We want all those opinions here, so.
Yeah. It's something we think about a lot. I know after last meeting, Mary and I kind of put our heads together and counted 7 or 8 different channels of communication that we tried to use to get the word out. And it's hard. Yeah.
You
No.
are doing a great job. There's just some more that needs to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
And I, you know, like Mary said, I would encourage all of us to reach out to, you know, like you do your district meetings, which I think is fantastic. I don't
Right.
think the rest of us do that, but I think it's a great idea. So the more people.
It's also
we can
another
share
thing
with,
that you
the
can
better.
do is if you have district meetings or things like that, don't be hesitant to reach out to one of the 6 of us who have been on that strategy team to come and be a voice there. You know, we're happy to do that. We've done that at other meetings.
I don't know if it would work, or even if Adam would be interested, but Bow Street, we all gotta eat. And,
Yeah.
And I don't know if we had even, it would be great if they could put it in our grocery bags as we left, if the clerk's good, or something like that. That would require some printing, but maybe that would be an effective.
We're getting some flyers designed in a couple of days that we should have available to hand out and post and things like that. But yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
Adam
it's coming.
has, Adam Nappy has been super supportive, so, yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Mary. All right. Moving on to our 5th order of business. Mr. Manager has a report for us, which I'll pass down. Mr. Bradley, Counselor, pass those down.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A few quick items to report. We have 2 current job postings that would be of interest, I think, to the general public. One is the previously discussed and deliberated upon position of the Town Council of Zoning Administrator that went out last week. Additionally, we just began a recruitment process for a full-time police officer, a replacement officer. And both of those are live on the town's website. And for those that don't know where that is, that's freeportmaine.com. Under departments and then under employment. There's a employment department, even though it's not technically a department of the town, where you can access all of our job postings. So if you know anybody in the public who knows anybody who has an interest in either of those 2 positions, please pass that information along. Our Public Works Department is going to begin street painting and crosswalk painting ahead of schedule due to the favorable weather. Knocking on the bench here, which is hardwood. We look like we've got a stretch of some pretty calm weather for a couple weeks, so expect to see them out ahead of schedule, which will mean please watch where you're driving at all hours of the workday. Expect to see people out in crosswalks and people working in the middle of the road. And they'll continue doing that as long as the weather allows until springtime. And last but not least, I have a little bit of information to present on a previous discussion we had about our financial investments and about our exposure to fossil fuels. So we got a preliminary report back. Jessica is still working with our financial advisors to explore what some of the alternatives to this information are. But the preliminary report was that approximately $122,000 or 1.6% of our total investments would be attributable to fossil fuels. So that's what our exposure is. That constitutes 6.5% of our total equities. So as we've talked about before, not everything that the town invests, in fact, only a minority of it is in stocks. We hold a lot of cash, we hold a lot of other secure instruments, bonds, things like that. So more secure instruments and equities, I should say. Not that they're secure. So that's just the preliminary take of what our current, all of our mutual funds and things like that contain for direct investments in fossil fuels. What they're looking at and what they're going to be working with Jessica now is to look at what some of those alternatives are. And there are alternatives to everything. And then when we have that information, not sure if we planned on having a working group working on this or just bring it back to the full council, but that would be when we would interface back with the council with some of that data for discussion. We should have, we know what the amount is that's exposed. We know what the alternatives would be. We can make some informed decisions on, what that would mean for investments. So and, you know, what our yield might look like if we were to move things out of fossil fuels and into other things and things like that. So I was not surprised by that number, but I think it's good information to have. You know, it's not as high as probably it could be, but it is substantial. For people that are substantially adverse to fossil fuels, $122,000 is a big amount of money. So, Counselor.
Yeah, are you looking at the whole portfolio or just this?
Yeah, that's everything, and that's everything that can be attributable to a company.
I don't mean just fossil fuels. I mean looking at the whole portfolio and what we can do to make it grow better, right? Because one of the things we have is a very low growth rate. I thought part of this was to get the whole thing. Here's our portfolio.
Yeah,
Instead of just look at the fossil fuel thing, look at the whole thing.
yeah, I mean, our growth rate is, for the part that's invested in equities, it's pretty on track with market. So for the 25% or so of your reserves that are invested in the stock market, you're getting a return that's pretty much, you know, a lot of it is index fund based and things like that. So we're getting a pretty close return to just the general market return. But the problem is that we have approximately, it's not exact, but approximately 75%, for example, of our reserves are in more stable instruments. And that's the policy discussion that we've beat around
Right.
several times.
Chip's right. I mean, that issue's been on our agenda for almost, I would say, 3 months, and what we're talking about is fossil fuels. Why aren't we talking
Well,
about
it's
that
the-
allocation?
It's the same policy that guides both. So rather than bring it back twice, I wanted to come back and say, we've got a new policy that addresses fossil fuels, and if we want to change the allocations, we could do it at the same time. Update the policy, give it back to Jessica and say, this is for the following year, how we want to manage our investments.
So we are looking at the whole thing,
Yeah, we'll have a chance
not
to
just.
discuss that, yeah. Like Peter said, there's ratios of 75-25 or 50-50, and we can adjust those and say, we want you to be more aggressive, less aggressive. So I'm
And we
not
could be
making
a
any decisions
little
on
bit
that.
more aggressive.
Yeah.
When we saw
There's room
this,
to
we
move.
didn't see that, so that's
We
what.
did, it was on there.
This was on there? What you just
Sorry,
said was
this
on-
is new. The fossil fuel information is new, but the split between the equities and
Right.
cash reserves and things like that.
And all I'm suggesting is the reason you're getting these questions now is we didn't know that you were going to do that at the same time.
Exactly, yeah, that's new information, yep. Yep. And I, as soon as I get the information back from Jessica, I'm ready to come back and
Yep.
have that discussion here.
Yep, and that's, just as we've discussed before, that's a council policy. So anything that's in there is open to majority vote of the council can change that. So there's not a lot involved in it when you want to change that, so. That's all I got.
Did they give you a date to when they'll come back with these alternative?
We just received that,
Just got it.
just the initial breakdown, and she's going to be working with them this week and probably next week to talk through what some of those other alternatives are, so. I think they're working on it now, I just don't have an estimated date of when it will be back to us, so.
Okay. That's right.
I'd like to get back to the first item of the zoning administration, and thank you for fast-tracking that, Peter. And my understanding is we have enough money in the revenue stream from codes to pay for that position, which is a huge plus. The other question, and I hadn't had a chance to review the job posting, but talked a little bit about possibly having the position for the environmental issues possibly is also rolled into that. Was that something that was added to that particular position, or is that something we discussed during the interview process?
It is something we can consider during the interview process. It's not in the posting. One of the complicating factors here is there is some interest in sharing a position. It's not firm, but from some of our neighboring communities, I know that they're at least preliminarily discussing it over in Yarmouth with their budget talks. So if we were to split a position, I don't think it would be necessarily that person doing those things, but it is something that if somebody has some interest in, we do have there's a few moving pieces. We've got some planning staff that has interest in those kind of functions as well, and depending on where the staffing falls with this zoning position, that may lead to some other moves inside that department, or maybe some re-examining what people are doing and shifting some duties around and things like that. So I think we'll know better when we see who the candidates are. I wouldn't necessarily say that we're making a job requirement, but if somebody had an interest in that position, in those kind of things, we would certainly look at it pretty hard.
Any questions for our manager? Thank you, Mr. Joseph. Moving on to our sixth order of business, this is our public comment period. So this is the time for any members of the public who wish to address the council to step on up to the podium or raise your electronic hand. This is for items not on our agenda, so if you see something that's on our agenda, hold your fire till we get to that. But if you want to talk about anything else, this is a good time to do it. So come on up, tell us who you are, where you're from, and what you want to talk about. And keep it relatively brief if you could.
Folks, thank you very much. And my name is Steve Migliori. I own a home here in Freeport. I've owned a home since '05. And the matter I would like to bring up, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak out. I probably should have spoke out 2 years ago when this matter was first brought to the attention of the council, and that's the short-term rental, I guess, ordinance or application process, if you will. And a couple of notes. Like I said, I've never done this before, so excuse me.
Take your time. You're doing fine.
You're doing great.
In fact, I can't remember the last time I said the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
It's like riding a bike. You don't forget.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess the first question I have is, I'm wondering if the council is open to considering some of making certain changes to the short-term rental program. As I said, and I confess, I should have investigated sooner because I think you had an open period several years ago. Didn't know what I didn't know. But now that I know, I'm asking if that's something the council is open to considering.
What are the changes that you would recommend?
Well, I think there are a few, but I'm not sure if I'm here specifically today to speak to those specifics. I will comment on one. I use VRBO. Let me make certain that I'm clear. This to me and my family is a rental place. Sorry, is a home. We come here when we're not renting, and we rent it only because it's the only way we can afford to keep it, right? So it is a little different than a full-time rental. I think that's the nature of the short-term rental program. The thing is, we try very hard to keep our home clean and safe, and we respect our neighbors, and I think those were overall the guide, the vision behind putting the program in place in the first place, and I fully support those things. One suggestion, top of the waves, is I use a third-party service to certify the safety of my home. I don't know if you're familiar with what's called Breezeway. And they operate in conjunction with VRBO and Airbnb and others. And the benefit to me is by certifying my home as safe, I get a discount on my insurance. And secondly, I'm able to tell people who rent my home that it's certified by a third party, Breezeway. I don't know if the council would consider incorporating something like that, because overall, as I looked at all of the requirements that I needed to fulfill in the application process itself, many of those were redundant to what I have already done through the Breezeway certification process. That's just one suggestion. So my first question is the council open to looking at that? I put that forward. I guess the answer sounds like it might be yes. I'm happy to participate further in the future. The second matter I wanted to bring forward is the application process itself. Last year, I found it to be a bit bumpy. I'll use that word because I don't think all the thought process had been put forward. I worked through it, and I guess and I was approved. This year, I ran into a problem, and the problem was very simply my fault. I take full responsibility. I lost sight of the fact that I had to renew by a certain date. And I missed the window, and at this point, my application is late. It's submitted, but I'm late. I fully accept responsibility for that. My question is I guess, and I'll plead, and I don't want this to sound like I'm complaining, when I get my property bill, the property bill is mailed to me in the U.S. postal mail, and I get it, I open it, and I know it's important. In this case, I was sent an email, and I guess I just missed the email. And I talked with Christine, very nice lady. I probably missed a reminder as well. Again, it's on me, but I'm wondering if there's a different way, in fact, maybe just a way to automatically renew people. So that's my second request, if you would consider options to how people renew their applications. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We do have, just to kind of keep you in the loop, in May, I think, is more or less the one-year anniversary of the ordinance, and we did say when we passed it that we would review after a year, and I know there's a few of us up here that are interested in looking at things again and seeing if we don't want to make tweaks or changes to it.
Okay?
So keep an eye on our calendar and.
Promise I will do that.
Yeah, in May.
Yeah.
And that's certainly something that, I took note of both those things, and I'll make sure that they're on our agenda for when we bring it back up.
Okay.
Yeah, the intent was to enable people to continue doing what they had been doing for many years, recognizing that there are a lot of people who rent their properties out in Freeport.
Right.
So it was, we personally, I'll speak for myself, I didn't feel like we had a handle on all the things that were going on, so this was an effort to start keeping track of things and to prevent it from getting out of hand and to keep it sort of at the level where it is.
I have one last comment, too.
Sure.
Is the application fee itself, $100, I guess, I don't know, is that a way of raising revenue? Is it a cost of doing the process?
It's meant just to cover the cost. So we looked at a lot of different towns. Portland, I think, is $1,000 or more.
Gee whiz.
Some towns are zero. So it's meant just to recover the costs. The other ways we looked at managing it would have cost more money and would have then raised the application fee. So we are trying to do it in-house, which is why it's a little bumpy, because we're getting
And by the
through
way,
it.
I'm still confused. I will speak with Christine tomorrow, because as a person who's renewing, I have no changes to report. I'm not sure if I still have to fill out the entire application. Again, I got to find out. But the second point I want to make to the $200 late fee feels a little steep.
$200 to the late fee?
I mean,
Oh, it's double, okay. Yeah.
is that punishment? Is that revenue? Is it? Again, I'm sounding like I'm complaining now, and I don't mean to, but
No, it's good information. Yeah. And I know that Councilor Pillsbury, I think on your list, is reviewing all of our fees for the town, or you brought it up, so you kind of volunteered yourself to review them, so this can be
yeah, I
on
thought I
that
read it
list of
wrong the
fees to
first
review.
time, and the second time I was shocked. So,
Yeah.
Is that $200 in addition to the application fee?
yes, it is. Yeah.
Believe so. I'd have to look at the ordinance, but.
Any opportunity for relief on that? For poor soul who's working for a living?
Yeah, I don't know that we can do it from up here tonight, but, talk to Christine. and
Appreciate you
we'll
hearing
keep in
me
touch
out.
with her as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, no. I said, we'll keep in touch with you and sort it out, yeah.
Okay. Listen, thanks very much for giving me a chance to be here.
Thanks for coming. That's great to have people
Thank you.
come up.
Have a nice evening, everybody.
Andrew Arsenault, Freeport. I'd like to bring up or re-bring up what was just discussed under Peter's announcements, which was the aspect that we're going to look into divesting from petroleum-based or oil-based stocks. And I would encourage us to take a really hard look before we do that, because first of all, the United States is probably one of the cleaner refiners of petroleum around the world. We just stopped buying oil from Russia, or we're going to contemplate stop buying oil from Russia. I believe, from what I've tried to find out, they don't have the environmental precautions that we do. Saudi Arabia is an alternative. They just executed 81 people. Some were beheaded. They're not a nice place all the time, although Aramco pumps their oil. It's they don't really pump their own. The Americans do. Venezuela is sort of a cesspool, to say the least, if we're going to buy oil from them. And I would also encourage you to think that besides just gasoline and petroleum products we put in our homes and our cars, that table's a petrochemical product. Foam in the seats are a petrochemical product. The fiberglass in your boat is a petrochemical product. The phone wires are a petrochemical product. So when we start to divest companies and talk about divesting, and some people are actually talking about, not us here, but debanking industries like this, we will continue to lose them. An electric car has Elon Musk come out the other day and said, basically, I can't make my car without petrochemical products. The dashboard is vinyl, the foam in the seats, the case on the battery, the battery wrappings, it's lithium, it's everything, but it's also plastic. It's also vinyl, it's also nylon, it's You know, I can't remember who it was, whether it was one of the companies said that make this stuff. We're basically, 5 feet from one of these products all the time. The microphone covers, whatever we do, the computer covers, the phone, the parts we put on our phone are all petrochemical. We run on a petrochemical world now. Yes, we can be cautious about it. Yes, we can do certain things, but to divest and debank these companies is really short-sighted because we're mad at them, because we want to go to electric cars. And we won't be able to do that unless we have oil to run the machines that press out the plastic parts to go on the car, that fuel the power plants, that put electricity into the motors, that run the machinery that make the electric cars. So it's a multifaceted hydra that you're looking at, not just, okay, we want to go to electric cars. So, and then we still have to make electricity somehow to charge the electric car. And solar panels can't do it all. They might be able to do 10 or 15% of it. Windmills, maybe another 10%, maybe. So when you go down this road, please be cautious how you send a message that these companies are bad because they're good American companies. You might have political views that you don't like what they do, or you don't like the fact that they do certain things, but we need them now to move ahead to the next spot. And Maine is one of the largest users to heat homes of oil. Probably more so than states in the Midwest that are closer to natural gas and closer to pipelines. I think Maine's still the top of the heap as far as states that use, heating oil. The third thing is, if you want to cut back on this stuff, stop buying stuff from overseas. I heard a statement the other day, they said the 15 biggest cargo carriers pollute more than all the cars in the world. Once they get out of port, they probably switch over to bunker C crude. As soon as you can't see them anymore. The 15 biggest cargo container ships probably pollute more than all the cars that run today. So, thank you.
Thanks for sharing your comments. Thoughtful comments for sure. Any other public comments from those here or anyone online? Raising a hand?
Got one hand on.
We do have one
Oh,
hand.
it went away.
Oh, false alarm. Oh, it's back.
There we go. We got, looks like Sally Leland. Let's make sure that's who it is.
Okay.
Oh, hold on.
Keeps going away.
I might have screwed up here. There we go.
Seven. 6 or so, yeah. Well, yeah, so I was just about to say that Sally, might take a stab in the dark here, but if it's sewer-related stuff, we do have a topic of discussion towards the end of the agenda for discussion about the sewer district. So if it's related to that, I'd ask you to hold your comments, but if you've got something different to say, by all means, shout out.
Go ahead. Hi, Sally. Oh, well done.
No, I was just going to mention the next sewer district meeting is on Monday at 7 o'clock, if anybody's interested.
Can you repeat that once more? We didn't catch the beginning of that.
The next trustee meeting at the sewer board will be on Monday evening at 7 o'clock. So if anybody's interested, feel free to join us.
Thank you, Sally. Is it available on Zoom, and is there a link somewhere online if people do want to join?
Hopefully it's on the town website. It didn't make it last month. Hopefully it's on this month. I can certainly get you a Zoom link.
Okay, we'll follow up, but I appreciate the heads up.
You bet.
Yeah, we'll get it on the town calendar.
Yep. Yeah, if you send the Zoom link over, we'll make sure that goes up. Sally, thank you.
Yep.
Any other public comment? All right. Seeing none, we'll move on to the seventh order of business, to take action on the following items of business, as read by the council chair. We have 4 items on our agenda tonight. The first one is to consider action relative to adopting our consent agenda. Our consent agenda has 2 items on it. The first of which is appointments to boards and committees, the second of which is approving victualler licenses. I would suggest, given the rest of our agenda and that we have victular licenses later on, that we hold action on the victular license portion of the consent agenda and not act on it tonight. Does anyone have an issue with taking that item off of the consent agenda? And we can discuss it separately, but I would just ask that we remove it from the consent agenda.
Why?
Because the next, further down on our agenda, we're talking about repealing the victular's license ordinance. So I don't want to renew people 2 weeks before we repeal the ordinance saying that you need one. It seems like it's.
Setting a public hearing, so it is 2 weeks.
It is 2 weeks. We could say, yeah, you got to file and complete your application today and pay the money, and then 2 weeks from now, we repeal the ordinance.
Well, can't we approve them and they don't necessarily need to pay it for 2 weeks until we?
I don't think we can approve it until they pay. That's the catch.
No, I mean, we can do this.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, postpone it for 2 weeks. That sounds fine. They aren't going to get in trouble, right?
They've done everything they need to do. They've applied, they've got their application in, and, you
They're all
know,
set. Yes, let's.
so if we go after them, they're just going to come back to us saying, well, you guys had it on your desk and you didn't act on
Yeah, I
it.
think you can assume that staff won't be pursuing anybody for not having a victualer's license if the council decided to pass on approving them for 2 weeks, so. That sound reasonable, Chris, seeing as you're involved in victualers as well? I said, I don't think that staff would be pursuing anybody for not getting their victualers if the town council is the one that tabled it.
So I guess to make it formal, I'll move that we remove item 61-22 from the consent agenda.
Second.
Does that all make sense? Anybody have questions about why we're doing that, or how? We'll bring it back up in 2 weeks if we have to, but we might not have to.
After we remove it, you want to make a motion to table it for 2 weeks?
Then
And it will stay live.
stay live?
Yeah, otherwise you'll have to vote it down tonight, which isn't the right message, I don't think.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well,
We
we'll,
won't deny them.
okay. So we'll remove it now, we'll do the consent agenda, and then table the item. Okay, cool. So all in favor of removing the item from the consent agenda?
We're tabling it? Is that what we're
We're
saying?
removing it from the consent agenda first, so. Any
Aye.
opposed? So that's 6-0, one excused. And then let's vote on the rest of the consent agenda, and then we'll come back to tabling that item. So the rest of the consent agenda now just has one item on it, which is item 60-22, which is regarding 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 new appointments to boards and committees.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
What does it mean waiving district requirement under Hunter Road Fields?
Yep, that committee probably has a District 1, 2, 3, and 4 requirement for each of the, oh, Chris, go ahead, you take it. You were there, so.
Only because I was there doing the minutes. So absolutely, that committee has to have 1, 2, 3, and 4. They also have to have RSU rep, I'm talking off the top of my head here, and a Conservation Commission representative. So Nelson would like to be reappointed. He is in District 2. We needed a District 4 rep. So the Appointments Committee decided to waive the district requirement because Nelson is a valued member. They didn't want to lose him. He wanted to remain on the board. We had no other applicants. So we wanted to keep an interested member on the board, and the way that we could do that was to remove that district requirement.
Any other questions while we have?
So the alternative would be to leave it vacant, right,
It
Chris?
would be vacant, and you would lose a active member of the board that's valued.
Thank you.
I just on the RSU board, I heard Craig Sickles was retiring.
He was asked if he wanted to continue, and he said yes. So I don't know. I mean, he was asked if he wanted to stay on.
I guess my question has always been whoever the director of the sports programs and stuff for the school, if he's retiring, does that make it awkward? I don't know.
If you want to pull that appointment off and have me reach out to him to see, because I was told that he was interested, so he went back on.
Okay.
Well, if you're an RSU representative and then you're no longer with the RSU, then I assume you would resign from the post. But until he does retire and the new person is confirmed, we wouldn't have somebody to fill the spot. So better to have him in place.
That may be the case.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I would.
that was gonna be my suggestion, is maybe you or I reach out to the superintendent's office to see what his schedule is, because he might be here for several months, or he might be leaving tomorrow for all that we know. And then when we know that, we can ask the superintendent's office to nominate a new or the RSU board to represent somebody to replace him when he's gone. So, and ask him, that would make sense, I think,
Yeah. So approve them tonight, and then we can make the switch if we need to make the switch.
but I was not aware of that.
Yeah. Any other questions about the? Yeah.
Shout out for former counselors on here, including Mr. Arsenal in the audience.
And Mr. Gleason on Coastal Waters, going back to Coastal Waters. All right. I believe we have this moved and seconded.
Was it red? I
No,
don't think,
we do not. We do not. So, Counselor Pillsbury, would you read the be it ordered for the consent agenda?
Absolutely. Be it ordered that the following appointments to boards and committees be approved. Do you want me to read all of them?
No, sorry, on our agenda,
Oh,
the be it ordered, and consent agenda as amended since we took an item off it.
sorry. Be it ordered that the March 15th, 2022 consent agenda as amended be adopted.
second.
All right, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 6-0. So one last bit is, I will move that the item 61-22 that we removed from the consent agenda be tabled for 2 weeks to our next scheduled meeting.
Second?
Thank you. Any,
Sure,
Lawrence, any other discussion on that? All in favor of tabling that item for 2 weeks?
Aye.
Any opposed? 6-0. All right, thank you, folks, for that.
That was the most painful, simple consent agenda that we've
All
dealt
right.
with in a long
It
time.
would have been easier to just have that one item and
I know,
vote on
right?
it separately.
Sometimes it works out like that.
Our next item is, blasting, item 57-22 regarding a blasting ordinance. So Counselor Fournier, would you read it in, and then we can chat about it?
Certainly, and can I ask one question before I do read that? I know we discussed in the back, under the be it further ordered, whenever we set a public hearing, if that has to be read, or if that could be automatic. Peter is going to research that. I just think it takes a lot of time, and, we're going to post it anyway. So does that have to be read out loud as part of adopting this to be legal? And I can read it tonight, but,
I'd read it tonight. I haven't got there yet, but
Okay.
I
thank you.
remember the question, and Chris and I will look at it for sure to see what we can
Thank
answer
you.
on it. So,
Okay. Be it ordered that a public hearing be scheduled for April 5th, 2022 at the town council meeting starting at 6 PM to discuss proposed Chapter 63 blasting ordinance. Be it further ordered that copies be distributed equally between the town clerk's office, the town manager's office, and the Freeport Community Library for inspection by citizens during normal business hours, and that the notices be placed on Freeport Cable Channel 3 and the town's website.
Second.
Do you want to do the background on this one, Mr. Joseph?
yeah, I'm completely unprepared, but this one is
I
pretty.
can
think
do it
it's
if you
pretty-
want.
No, I think it's pretty simple. So some of you have looked at this already on the members of the ordinance committee and the previous ordinance committee. This was brought to our attention by resident, not petition, but resident contact saying, hey, we don't have a blasting ordinance. We had a spate last summer of a lot of projects that were blasting, some of which were disturbing people, some of which were surprising people. And so that led us to consider the creation of this blasting ordinance at the ordinance committee for the past 6 months or so. What it does is it sets a notification process primarily for letting people know when the blasting is going to be happening, the proposed blasting. It also sets a process where an applicant or the blaster, call them the blaster, the proposed blastor, will do pre-blast surveys, which is another common practice. It's when you would go and do a survey of foundations and buildings within a certain radius of a blast site and water supplies. So this is commonly done in other towns. It is not taking any enforcement position on that, but it's just making sure that the abutters all have the ability to have that function performed before the blast happens. Those are two very common side effects of blasting that people have complaints about, and they end in civil matters. And the easiest way to deal with that is to have a precondition survey done. So when there's a civil matter that happens because you blast and you ruin your neighbor's well, you've got a water quality test report that you can then go and say, hey, it's changed from this. So it's a pretty simple process. It puts a little bit of a burden on a developer or someone who's going to be doing the blasting, but it is reasonable. And then the resolution of it would be civil, but it would provide a baseline of information for abutters to use to protect themselves. So that's pretty much what it does. The big part of it is the notification, just because people are frequently caught by surprise. We have some people just don't like to hear dynamite going off next to their house. I mean, that doesn't sound too unreasonable. We have other people who have legitimate concerns, and I would say medical concerns, things, animals, children, their own personal medical concerns, all those kind of things that you have to take into account in having a plan for when somebody's going to be lighting off dynamite next to your house to blast rocks out, if that happens. So that notification is not required now currently under state law. Some companies do it, but we were getting enough inquiries and complaints from people like, not like it's happening in the middle of the night, but still right next to their house, right next to their business. And also incidents where people with legitimate medical concerns, sensitivity to blasts, things like that, would call and complain here when they were startled. For example, if you have PTSD, if you have noise sensitivity, if you startle, if you have a medical condition that causes you to startle, it can cause all kinds of things. Mess your heart up, mess your brain up. So they like to know about those kind of things. So I think it's the least we can do is put this notification process in place.
And we model this after other towns. There's a bunch of towns that have this in place, so we're not going out on a limb here. And we reached out to some of the companies that do the blasting for feedback and got some tweaks that we incorporated. But nobody was against it because the general consensus is that it's stuff that they tend to do anyway for the most part. So tonight we're just setting the public hearing for 2 weeks from now.
I just have one question, and under storage of the material, I'm talking the dynamite, it's not addressed here.
No.
Maybe it has been issues in the past, and if we talk about hazards to neighborhoods, I know the fire marshals review that in ATF, but maybe we ought to have some sort of linkage if they're going to take product out to conduct blasting here, and God forbid they get it in their garage, and there's a garage fire, we're going to have a lot bigger, so. And maybe it will be covered. But we did have that issue many years prior to your arrival, Peter, where a gentleman had a bunch of dynamite in his backyard that wasn't marked. It never went off, but luckily we were able to control it. But to me, those two go hand in hand. Proper storage of the blasting caps and the actual dynamite, if it's going to be on that property. If it's coming in by a vehicle, we're all covered, is what I'm concerned with if it's on site. But.
Yeah, I'm completely ignorant to that first half. I know the process where they transport it in and when they would blast would be covered under this, but that first part, if that's something of concern, we should probably look harder at that, because I don't think any of our research or any of the other ordinances we looked at cover, just the storage or stockpiling in town, so.
Are you talking about an individual in town that had this, or are you talking about a commercial operation?
This is an individual. Commercial operations that come in are governed from the state fire marshals, and they have to be licensed, and they notify.
Right.
I am talking about if I decided, used to be not many years ago, people were moving stumps or whatever, which was my grandfather, and we actually found some old dynamite in the shed that was weeping. Luckily, it got handled properly, but that, we don't have a lot of blasting like it used to be. But that certainly can create a significant hazard.
I think fall under a different thing. This is specifically for blasting, and I think it's commercial blasting, right?
I mean, that's, yes, the intent of the ordinance.
Commercial, okay.
Yeah, I mean, the intent of the ordinance is not to cover that situation. I'm not saying we shouldn't look at that, but
Right.
that's.
It'd be a separate thing if we do, yeah. Mhm. Any other comments? All right, so we've got a motion to set a public hearing for 2 weeks. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, 6-0, we have a public hearing for blasting in 2 weeks. Another public hearing that we were considering is a public hearing to repeal our victular ordinance, as was discussed shortly earlier. So, Councilor Lawrence, would you read this one in?
Sure. Be it ordered that a public hearing be scheduled for April 5th, 2022 at the Town Council meeting starting at 6 p.m. to discuss the proposed repeal of Chapter 30 Victual Ordinance. Be it further ordered that copies be distributed equally between the town clerk's office, the town manager's office, and the Freeport Community Library for inspection by citizens during normal business hours, and the notice be placed on Freeport's local cable channel 3 and the town's website.
Second.
Second by Councilor Daniele, thank you. So I think we talked about this earlier, so this is not surprising news to anyone. I think Peter had done some research that we had asked for on
Yes.
food safety. You want to summarize that?
So we learned a lot. The code officer and I spent a couple hours delving through the state, the health inspection program, which is one of the facets that covers is restaurant licensing, which I think was the biggest concern. It also covers things like food preparation, all kinds of other things. But I think the biggest concern, at least that I heard, was that how do our restaurants get inspected? It is a thorough process. The state does regularly inspect them, and the state does have on-call, I should say, in municipalities, 98, 99% of the state, where the state is the health inspection authority, including Freeport currently, they have on-call staff, and they would respond to any complaints at any time, including weekends, if there's a health complaint about a restaurant, nights, weekends, things like that. There are a few municipalities, larger cities, that run their own health inspection programs. To do that, you have to have delegated authority from the state, which means basically you have to meet all the conditions that, the same standards as what the state would do when they were doing the inspections. You have to be approved by the commissioner of HHS or the CDC, which the health inspection program is under Maine CDC, to get that delegated authority. What comes along with that is you are also responsible 24/7, holidays, weekends, night times, vacations, to always have somebody able to respond to a health emergency. And it's not just, a health inspection program complaint or concern, not just in things like restaurants, but, anything that would require that program to respond. I think like group homes might be one, things like that. So any place that has a communal kitchen, things like that. So I'm not recommending that we do that process. It would probably involve several dedicated town staff, which isn't a big deal for a city. You probably need like 3 or 4 people to have a 24/7 call schedule. The state even specifically calls out the only time that the state will respond to a delegated municipality is if it's the regular person is on vacation, nobody else is available, or the regular person is sick and none of your other on-call people are available. So they're even that specific. Like, we are not coming into your town to do the health inspections if you get delegated authority. So we don't currently participate in that process. The victualer's license has nothing to do with that, really, other than it just mentions it and it refers to it. So if we eliminate the victualer's license, at any time in the future, we could staff up, get the right training, and opt into the health inspection program without a victualer's license in place. So I think that was the main concern. Does eliminating the victualer's license remove our ability? It would not currently remove our ability, and it would not remove our ability in the future to opt into this enforcement program if that's something that we chose to do in the future. So,
Councilor Bradley?
Yeah, I'm remembering the conversation a little bit differently. So my question would be, if we repeal, and we were to find by happenstance or just by rumor or by report, a health safety concern with one of our victualers, would we have the authority to take any action with respect to that health issue if it was an immediate threat?
If it was food-based in the kitchen, no. We would have no additional, different authority than we have today, which is we'd have to pick
call
up the
the
phone
state.
and call Joel Demers to come down and do an inspection.
Do we, so you're saying even if we don't repeal the victuals license, we still can't react to a food emergency in any kitchen or establishment in our town? On an emergency.
Food-specific, right, the specific things that are covered under the health inspection program. Life safety things, we do have the ability to address. So a lot of those things fall under the police chief authority, or the
That's
fire
not,
chief.
that's not
or the
victular
code
license related, that's just
It is not.
other
Yeah,
building.
we
code.
have that anyways, regardless of the victuals.
Independent of the victuals license, we have a way to respond to health, safety, emergencies that are posed by victualers in their establishment. Doesn't matter how you characterize them. We don't lose that by repealing
Correct.
victuals license. Okay, thanks.
Yep. Our enforcement ability would not change. We'd still have the same limits we have today, and we would still have the same ability to get authority for, and by food safety, I mean the person who goes in with the thermometer and temps the hollandaise sauce to make sure it's at 140 degrees and that it's not poisoning somebody. Those type of
But
things.
if we found worms with little cocculi on them.
I think we'd probably take a picture, we'd probably call the health inspector, we might go out to the front of the house and say, hey, there's worms in all your food, you might want to stop eating. Yeah.
On the way out after taking the picture, we saw people dying in the restaurant. We could go in and shut down this is obviously a ridiculous example, but we would have the authority, independent of the victuals license, to shut that kitchen down because of the threat to public safety.
I do not think we currently have the ability to shut the kitchen down, nor would we if the victuals license was removed. I think we'd have to take a different step. We'd have to probably notify everyone eating there that you might want to stop eating here. There's an unsafe thing. The state health inspector will be here in an hour. I think that that's the current limit of our authority for food safety. If there is a life safety issue, like the building's going to blow up and collapse, acid is dripping into your plates or something, I don't know. I think there's a fine line between the food safety and the life safety. We have a broad authority right now if people are in imminent danger because of the actual condition of the building to order the building closed, vacated, things like that. So I don't know where, I think that we would probably resolve it with the person running the restaurant and the people in the restaurant. I think we could just maybe, the code officer and the police officer on duty could loudly state, hey, so you're telling me you're not going to close down because there's bugs crawling out of all your food or something like that, maybe to let people know. But I don't know if we could physically slap a lock on their door and have that stand up in court, no.
And we can't do that now.
Right, no change
If
to.
it's food.
We could get
Other
that,
things,
we
yes.
could get that ability. We would be one of 5 or 4 municipalities in Maine that have that authority, yes,
But we don't have it now.
correct.
Counselor Daniele?
Has a victualer's license ever been repealed?
Denied.
No, I'm talking about repealed.
Oh, revoked, like the
yeah.
license, yeah.
Taken
yeah.
back.
Taken-
I can give you 10 years of anecdotal experience from me personally, not for a food safety concern. We had a few that came to the council for public hearing for revocation because of unpaid taxes that always get paid 2 hours before the council meeting. So all that does is give Chris and Jessica and myself heartburn waiting for somebody to come in. We still have the ability to collect delinquent taxes through a tax lien and a foreclosure process. It's just like an extra stick that you're using to hit somebody into the tax collector's office, my office, which I don't think we need. I think we have the ability to.
And how often has one been denied?
I've never seen one. I can give you the 10 years of experience that it hasn't. Chris hasn't seen one in 5 years, 6 years that she's been here, so.
Because when you show up.
7 years that she's been here.
And I think that's because when you show up, you have your license from the state, and they're not
Right.
gonna,
Right. I know, we've never, and I've only been on the council 3 years, but we've never denied one here, and it's always on our consent agenda to.
Never,
approve.
never for a discretionary reason. We've had to wait for people to come on the council agenda until they get their state food license copy to us or something like that. But that doesn't change the fact that they are open and doing business without a state food license, which is already a violation of the state health laws, not just the victualer's ordinance that has these little teeny teeth in it that's not going to bite anybody. The big enforcement on this is the state health inspectors. they're the ones that can shut down the restaurant permanently if you're putting people in danger.
Other questions on setting the public hearing for the victualler's license? Now that we all know how to pronounce it, we're going to get rid of it. All in favor of setting the public hearing for 2 weeks?
Aye.
Any opposed? Was that a yes, Counselor Bradley?
I'm still ruminating.
We're just setting the public hearing, but you,
Yes, I have
yes
no
for
problem
tonight?
with the public.
All right. 6-0.
Behind the curve here.
Great, thank you. Last action item on the agenda is item number 59-22, about some annual reports from our affordable housing TIFs. And Town Manager Peter Joseph has 5 minutes to explain this to us.
I'll take one. This is the annual report that's required, where we report on all of our affordable housing units to the state. So our newly minted assessor, Min Lee, has put together the list here of 2 districts that we have, and it's Oakleaf 2, and it's the relatively new, I'm going to get it wrong, Quarry Ridge, the Quarry Ridge apartments that were purchased from the state by Freeport Housing Trust. So we have 2 affordable housing. The breakdown of the number of units is on those 2 reports. We just have to do this every year, and you have to, it's kind of a, public information piece, so that you have to look at it, you have to know what we have, and you have to say, yep, that's what we recalled. The big thing in here is to really shine a light if an affordable housing TIF was being used for non-affordable housing purposes. So if you look at this list where it says 34 and 25 affordable housing units, and next to it said 275 market rate housing units, that's when it would be time to have conversations about what's our affordable housing TIF actually accomplishing for affordable housing, and that would be a public discussion. Whereas both of these cover only affordable housing units, it seems pretty straightforward to me.
Counselor Bradley?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand what we're doing. It seems to me that we're being asked to certify that these units are not only being offered, but being occupied by families who meet the criteria. Is that true? In other words, when it says that we, that is the town council, certify that the units are affordable housing units, it says affordable means 4 households earning no more than 120%. I suppose that could mean that they're available to families that do that, they're advertised for that, but my guess is it means that they're actually occupied by, that we're certifying that they're occupied by families with those income levels.
Yeah, we don't certify who's actually in there, but the Freeport Housing Trust, when they put these units in, these are covered under programs with other reimbursements and things. So their claim to us is that, yes, these are set aside only for existing affordable units, that every one of these 34 would be available only to somebody who meets those criteria.
So my question is, do we know who's in these units? What the income levels are? Do we have any idea?
Nope.
Should we, before we certify?
Would that create problems if we did? Because
I'm thinking, I'm not responding to your question, I'm trying to think of the implications.
In other words, if they found,
Yeah.
if down the road, we found out that 4 of them were being occupied by young hedge fund operators out of Portland because they didn't want to live near the water, would we be subject to a criticism that we certified that they were low-income housing or affordable housing?
I don't think any more than the fact that we were, given false, misleading information from the people who report to us the number of units and what they're used for.
Do we ask the people who certify to us whether this represents occupied by as opposed to advertised for? And I don't want to make a pain. I don't want to make a pain in the neck.
No.
I want to understand what we're doing.
The best person to answer that question is the person in between us who's not here tonight, because John served on the FHT board for, John Egan.
I think we're seeing Freeport Housing Trust next week at our workshop.
We can follow up with them for sure. I don't know if they certify annually. I do know when they put these into these programs that there's a certification there. I do know, for example, that The Quarry Ridge, for example, is funded by several different state programs, and they have to meet different criteria. So I don't think it would be just us that's, on the hook here. I think that there's several other programs that if they were surreptitiously renting them to market rate people and saying they were affordable, that there would be issues there. We can do some more research on it if that would make you comfortable. This is due on
We
April.
only have a week to go. Is there any deadline on
I
this?
think it's
or-
April 30th. Hold on one second.
Counselor Fournier?
I'm comfortable. I've worked with a family that's there. I can tell you that each apartment has to certify annually with their income, with the supplements that come in for that. I know there's a waiting list there that you have to go in to get in to apply for Quarry Ridge, or the ones I'm very familiar with was Oak Leaf. So I'm comfortable that the people that administer, that the people meet the low qualifications for low-income housing are very diligent in doing that, and I trust that we do not have a situation where someone's abusing it.
I can't say that for 100%. My sentiments run with Councilor Fournier's, that I know the way that the programs are run, but I can't give you a certain, yep, I know all 34 of those are affordable. I can't do that tonight. So if you would like that, we could do that research for you and probably get something certified.
Is there any deadline on this?
April 30th, so we've got time.
We do. Do you have any problem waiting, Daryl, till they certify it to us?
I don't. I think, I'm sure they can probably pretty quickly for the office, but yeah.
But isn't that what this guy did?
Nope.
No.
This is just our list of the units that are being taxed and where that TIF money is going. So we have 34 and 25. Do I have those numbers right? I think so. 25 and 34 of the apartment units in those buildings are assessed by our assessor as going into this affordable housing TIF. The money, we have agreements on both of those where a portion of that tax revenue is returned to them as a benefit for providing affordable housing. So no, we have not, the town has not certified that those, when they originally did the TIFs, they told the state that, and it was approved by the state on the premise that these would remain affordable. And I know that, for example, Quarry Ridge is covered. I don't know about Oak Leaf, I'm sure it is, but Quarry Ridge is covered by other state programs where they have to, have different criteria for meeting different assistance levels. So in addition to the affordable housing TIF.
So does the state do that?
They do, but I don't know if it's the same criteria that what you're seeing on here, the 120% that you just referenced. And they have several different programs that some, it's not, for example, it's not just all Section 8 federal HUD money. Some of it is, there are state programs in play as well that's not HUD money. So they have different standards for all of those. And they have a different standard for the affordable housing TIF that's approved by the state after being entered into by the town and the developer.
So how many times do we get inspected, or do they get inspected? I guess we're gonna do one more. Is that, that's what it sounds like?
Yeah, I mean, all that I would suggest is just getting a written certification from, if we're gonna do that, get a written certification from the executive director over at Freeport Housing Trust that, yes, the current units, we have that many units at each of the properties that are certified, that are occupied by, I mean, we could do that. I'm sure Matt could put that to us in a day or two if he needed to.
Counselor Pillsbury, you had a question?
What if it comes back that it isn't? What happens then?
I think there are some consequences there, probably beyond the town. I think that we'd have to look at those state programs, and I think that the affordable housing TIF itself would be in question. The only entity that benefits from the affordable housing TIF on both of these, they're both set up this very similar way, is Freeport Housing Trust. So there's a tax, a portion of the taxes that are collected, I think it's 50% in both of them. The local taxes, 50% of it goes to the tax base, supports the town, the school, the county, Metro Transit District. The other 50% goes into a TIF fund, which is returned to them to pay off the taxes, essentially, to pay off the operating costs for the building. So if these were decertified, or those TIFs were decertified because they weren't being occupied by affordable housing people, and the TIF goes away, all the other taxpayers actually would see a benefit. The Freeport Housing Trust would see a reduction in the amount returned to them if there were no other consequences. I don't know if there are at the state level for that kind of an issue. And by the way, for the record, which camera am I looking at? We have no suspicion that anything untoward is happening at any of the affordable properties in Freeport. It's a hypothetical question if you just tuned in.
Yeah, to that end, I'm reasonably comfortable saying that, certifying that these units still exist and are intended to be used the way, that they've been reported to us. And I think if we find otherwise, there's other mechanisms we can use to enforce it. So I'm okay. There's a small amount of risk there, but I'm okay with that risk and putting it through tonight. But if you guys want to wait, I'm okay with that too. So.
I'd prefer to wait, but I'll abstain if you want to vote on it.
There's no time constraint here, so if the council wants to table it, we can just report on it at the next
It's
meeting.
not a question, I don't question it. I just don't want to certify something we don't know the answer to. That certification's a little different than just voting to support it.
So I guess if we approve it tonight, we find otherwise, which I don't think so, because the waiting list of all those facilities are through the roof. Then we can take action, I would think, that would probably go in a legal thing. But I don't think there's going to be a problem there, dealing with them for many years.
You guys want to vote on, or do you want to delay, table? Consensus here, we can either table it or vote it.
Vote.
Vote. All right, let's put it up for,
I prefer to table it.
you prefer to table it?
I mean, if we're certifying it, I mean, we don't want to get in the business of certifying something that we don't know. I mean, I think that's a dangerous path for us to go down. Even though we're sure, I mean, we don't have the proof.
It's fine.
And we would take, just to be clear, everybody be comfortable with written documentation from the FHT office stating that they are all still occupied as required by the TIF by that income level.
Certainly.
Okay. I can get that. That's not a problem at all. Yeah.
Want to table it? Okay. All right, somebody want to make a motion to table this then?
I move to table item 5922
For 2 weeks, till the next meeting?
till the next meeting.
Second.
All right, all in favor of tabling it for 2 weeks?
Aye.
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 And any opposed?
Yeah.
2 opposed, so Pillsbury, Daniele, so 4 to 2. So we're tabling it for 2 weeks. All right, good discussion. We learned a lot. All right, next, so we're done with our action items. Now we're into other business, more informal. We're not going to take a vote. We don't anticipate taking a vote on anything else tonight. The first item under other business is a quick one. It's a discussion about amending the town council meeting time. So I think this is just one of our own rules that we set for ourselves that said our meetings had to be at 6:30. In discussions that we've all had internally, we said, why don't we start earlier so we can not be here as late? So we proposed moving it from 6:30 to 6. And it looks like our town clerk has offered us an opinion that we just need to amend our own rules of order and procedure, which is where that 6:30 time is noted. So anybody have a comment or a question or a problem moving to 6 o'clock instead of 6:30? So then I assume, Chris, you would want us to make a motion to change our own rules of order? To amend it to say that they'll start at 6 o'clock?
Simple majority vote.
We don't need a public hearing to do that, so we can just do it tonight?
Motion second and a majority vote can amend any of your rules of order.
All right. Counselor Fournier, do you want to make the motion?
I do, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion that the town council set the regular scheduled meetings at 6 PM, starting at the next meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Just a question.
6-0, yes?
I vote, I'm in favor of this motion.
Thank you for clarifying.
I want to do it. The question is, should we be more specific that it's the regularly scheduled council meeting as opposed to every, okay, just, we all understood it to mean that?
Yeah, so
I'm
then,
fine with that.
starting with April, yep.
Okay.
Yep. Starting with the next meeting, well, it does bring up a question. We have a workshop, we have 2 workshops coming up. Next Tuesday and the Tuesday following are 2 workshop dates. So our next regularly scheduled meeting isn't until 3 weeks from now.
I think we probably do the regular, get to the regular scheduled council meeting, take it effect, and then we can move the workshops after that, because those have already been published, right?
Got it. So then the workshops will be 6:30 workshops. And then the April 5th meeting will start our 6 o'clock meetings.
That's good, because we set several public hearings at 6 o'clock, starting on April 5th, so.
I did see that.
Oh, did we set 6 o'clock already? Yeah. It's a good thing. Yeah.
It's a good thing everything's lining up,
Yeah.
like not like tabling the victualers for 2 weeks, because
Yeah.
we'd have some really confusing actions going on here if we, yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, so we only got 2 items left, but they're 2 good, meaty discussion items, which I think we'll have good conversations about. The first one is a debrief of it says debrief of meeting with sewer district, but I think it's more than that. I think it's more a discussion around how we want to collaborate with the sewer district if they want to collaborate with us. And I know Councilors Bradley and Pillsbury have been to a meeting to discuss that potential collaboration. Mary Davis from FEDC has also been there, and I think she's sticking around for this part of the discussion as well. So I think the first way to attack it maybe just to get an update. Maybe, Councilor Bradley, if you want to give us an update on how that meeting went and what the outcome was, and we can figure out where we want to go from here, just have a discussion. I think we've got some folks from the sewer board as well, and if you guys want to say something, raise your hand. I know we've got a couple of folks there, so.
We've got at least Sally and Lee Harris on
Yeah.
there. Do you want me to bring them so we can see their?
Yeah, bring them in, yep.
Bring 'em in.
Yeah.
See their pretty
Bring 'em in.
faces here? Hold on.
Annette, are you comfortable doing that summary?
Sure.
Debrief?
And bring them up.
Yeah, they're,
Is there anybody else? Is Dan Bacon there or Leanne?
Leanne, no.
Nope.
Leanne, okay.
got Jim from our local radio station and Reginald, who I don't know if they're here for the sewer district conversation. Those are the only other 2 people in the room.
The summary is brief. There was just to review how we got to this point, the council at one of the last meetings appointed a small committee to meet with a small group from the sewer district to talk about issues of common interest and ways in which collaboration might help both the sewer district and the town. And this group was Lieris, Sally Leland, Mary Davis, me, Ken Bacon, Leanne from FEDC, and Carolyn. And we spent a little bit of time getting to know one another, just who's who. And then we spent a little bit of time making a couple decisions. One, not decisions, but making a couple observations. One is this is an amazingly good time to bring the town and the sewer district together because both of them have major issues on their plate that relate to one another. The sewer district has on its plate somewhere between $8 and $25 million worth of plant modifications that its consultant has told them are important to do in the foreseeable future. Timing not specific as far as I know, but right away for some of it. Some of it can wait a little longer. And not doing that affects the quality of our harbor, the quality of our water, the desirability of being in District 3 with odors, and the clamming industry, which is a big part of our marine economy. All of which are issues that are important to the sewer district, but frankly are very important to the town as well. These are critical issues to us as a maritime community. And then on the other side of the equation, I think is what the issue that brought us closer together to discuss this was as we went through the downtown revisioning and some of the projects that had led the way, and to talk about what they are, we began to realize the connection fees to the sewer were a critical issue to changing the way in which the downtown works. And those are financial issues that are important to revisioning, but they are also, from the sewer district's perspective, a very important way to fund repairs, modifications, and needs to improve the plant as they come up. So we identified that, those 2 issues, and I think after, a fair amount of back and forth and get to know you and what about this and what about that, we came away thinking that the time is right to consider the whole range of options for working together. And that's without making any commitment, anybody, to any particular solution, but just the commitment to work together to identify all those we could think of and to use whatever resources the town council would give us or the sewer district would give us to find expertise to help us identify funding sources and collaboration opportunities that might not be available just to the sewer district or not just to the town. So I guess I'm here to report this sewer task force, or whatever you want to call it, is ready to continue the work. And I know that counselors have, ideas and have issues and have interests that ought to guide this group in its deliberations. And, this is a time to talk about those things.
Yeah, fair enough. I'll sort of add to that. I think we've got a great open spirit, I think, on both sides to say, hey, there's a lot going on with the sewer district. There's a lot going on in town. Connection fees, we've heard, are an issue. Plant modifications are kind of looming. I'm echoing really a lot of what Councilor Bradley said, right? It's in our both shared mutual best interest to work together to figure out how to help each other. And I'll give kudos to the sewer district for effectively managing things for the last however many years they've been doing it, longer than I've been around, I think. We've never been in the newspaper for any problems with our sewer plant, so that's clearly something is being done right over there, which is fantastic. So thank you for keeping Freeport out of the news for that reason. So I'm supportive of continuing the discussion, of exploring alternatives. I don't have an idea on the table. I have an idea of some questions I would want to ask if we were to collaborate. I've talked to Ed about these before. I don't know what kind of collaboration the sewer district wants, is seeking. Are they looking for help in applying for grants to other people? Are they looking for the town to grant them money? And
I think maybe I should shut up and let Mary talk, but I think it's all those things. I mean, there's a range of funding mechanisms that Woodward and Kern have identified for them, and perhaps under a certain set of circumstances, the town might help by participating in that funding. We have funding sources that aren't available to the sewer district as a standalone sewer district, and as a contributing source of revenue, that might make sense. On the other hand, it seems to me, listening to Lee and Sally about and how open they are about this, that you could be talking about something that doesn't involve a town contribution to the modifications, but a cooperation some other way, maybe being a grant applicant on a grant that would add power and maybe add to the amount of funding available under something they already have available, or maybe there's just some small ball solution to fees for connections that we can explore. Mm-hmm. But it's all on the table, and I think that Lee, every time Lee, I hate to congratulate you on anything, but I'm gonna. You know more about this sewer district than anyone will ever know, and what you bring to the table is always educating us when you speak, and so just to get to have you there and ask you the questions, and Sally, you as well, and for us in the beginning it will be a process of education, but I think we know about some of the ways that we can help funding, and we don't know whether they matter. I understand from Lee that he could do this all on his own if he had to. But there may be ways to save money, and there may be ways to increase the amount that's available, and to expedite the timing if the town's at the table. Let's just talk about it. Let's see what we come out of it. And we know we are not being asked to make those of us who have been appointed by the council are not being asked to make a decision. We're being asked to identify alternatives and to present them for the council for decision. So don't anybody be afraid that we're going to run off and sign a document on your behalf.
On a broader scope, are we talking about just doing what needs to be done? Has that been identified, or is it more what can we do to make it better? The whole thing, including the town. I mean, has that been?
Yeah, it's on the table. Okay. I mean, I think Woodward and Kern has done it. If you haven't read it, take a look at it. It's an exhaustive report. Comprehensive, maybe is the better way to say it, report about what the sewer district needs now in the midterm, next 3 or 4 years, and then a little longer term. And you could do all of that at once. You could do it in pieces, and I think Lee has a strategy for doing it, and we'll certainly hear that and listen to it. The scope of the Woodward and Kern work may be something that is on the table. I'll just say it. I mean, it starts at the pump stations and works into the plant. Is there any question about what's going on in the ground outside the pump station, deeper into the district? I don't know. Lee will know, though. He'll have a view on that, and maybe he'll express it tonight. And then, so scope of the project's an issue. The scope of the funding is an issue. How we could participate in the funding and whether that makes sense to us. And then the town is an issue. And then I think some of these subsidiary issues, like the connection fees, will fall out of that. Questions about, I'm just going to talk hypothetically. Say there's let's say there's a $20 million project, and the town somehow agrees that it makes sense for the town to participate in that in a substantial way. Then I would think the town would want to be deeply involved or deeply educated about how the financial workings of this will all go. So one, our investments protected from our perspective, guarded, and also that we don't find ourselves in 30 years back at the table like this again. So those are all. Leland, slap me if I'm saying anything out of your comfort zone, but those were my understandings from our conversation, which were quite broad and open to discussion. No one making any commitment about doing anything.
I would hope, I know, serving on the sewer board, some of the infrastructures that are got to be addressed. I'd like to see us really, if we're going to do this, let's open it up. Let's talk personnel. The sewer department down there has a lot of reduction in equipment that we have in public works. There are a lot of other municipalities across the state where the sewer department is an active municipal department where they share resources and everything. I think it's a great opportunity to see. I'm a big proponent of regionalization. When we look at fire department, we look at sewer departments, we look at police departments, we all do this duplications of stuff across all the boards. We're all struggling for personnel, we're all struggling for money. Let's take a refresh look at this, and maybe there's some awesome things along with supporting each other on making that a better system. So I hope it's truly broad and nothing is gonna be left off the table.
Yeah, any other comments? Two things come to mind. One, it's, we can't ignore that all of the ratepayers of the sewer district are also taxpayers in the town of Freeport, but not all of the taxpayers are on the sewer district lines. So not all the taxpayers are also ratepayers. So that's a question we need to be aware of. On the other hand, the sewer does go through downtown, and development in downtown, in theory, benefits all of town. That's what we've been hearing about for the last 2 years. So we do want to encourage development downtown. One of the discussions I had with John, who's not here tonight, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but my takeaway was that we can also be somewhat strategic in how, if we do choose to deploy any funds or make any incentives, how we choose to do it. So it might not be, hey, here's a check to the sewer district, good luck. It could be, hey, here's a way we can help work with the kinds of development we want to encourage. If we can help subsidize a sewer fee in order to encourage the right kind of development, maybe that's a way to do it. If we do get financially involved, I've got a handful of questions. We don't need to go through them tonight because we're not going to get answers tonight, but normal things, I think, that I would ask of any sort of investment I was making in my day job, just to make sure that things are being done responsibly. I don't intend to do a forensic audit and dive in deep and camp out in the sewer district and make sure. That's not my job. I don't perceive that as my job. I just want to take a look at the high level and say this is how things go there. So that's my take on it. So I'm happy to kind of go over that list of questions with you guys if you want to convene that subcommittee to meet again. I think it's probably worth kind of getting some consensus from the council if you guys are interested in continuing the discussion, or if there's a hard no or a hard yes, and that's worth voicing if anybody feels that way tonight.
Yeah, I guess from the small committee's perspective, we have already given everything else that Mary was doing, she spent a reasonable amount of time on the sewer in the last couple of weeks, so have I. And there's no sense in us doing that if you have a different, or Matt, if you have a different idea about how you want to accomplish this other than through this committee. So I think I would like to hear that you think what we've done to date is valuable and you'd like us to continue along the line we've described, or not. That's the purpose of coming forward tonight. In terms of any questions you have, we welcome them. Any guidance we can get, all we're trying to do is come back to you with as well-developed a set of alternatives as we can develop in conversations and with expertise. So any questions you have about sensitivities, issues, concerns in advance would be very useful to us. Mary,
Thank you. A couple things that I would say, Mary Davis, FEDC. There's several reasons why this bubbled up from us, from economic development. One, and also, I'm a Freeport citizen, and guess what? I actually use the sewer system. I'm one of the few of us that are on it. It's important from an economic development that we do have clean water around us. That's one of the allures of people coming to Freeport, and one of our, we get a lot of visitors here. For the first time, we had a news article that came out last week that said, oh my gosh, that we're one of the number 9 of the visiting spots in Maine for the summer, and it's not just because of shopping, it's because we have such beautiful outdoor hiking. Hallelujah, people are finally seeing it. And so the water quality is really important. But also, it's really important from an economic development. Number one, if you look at many of the users of our current sewer district are our businesses. It's Route 1 South and it's downtown. So we have a good reason to try to make sure as a town that we have the infrastructure improvements that we need, because those folks are using our sewer system now and are going to continue to. And the second thing is, as we add more development, which again, we've seen in the downtown revisioning, we want housing downtown. And so as I'm talking to new developers who are coming in and they're seeing the fees that we're charging to do connections, it just says, it becomes a town opportunity, I think, for us to figure out how to collaboratively work with the sewer district to figure out how to take care of this. It's a town problem. It's not just a sewer district problem. It's a town problem. And so I'm encouraging us to work together to try to find the best solution for it. I don't know what that is. $25 million is a big chunk that makes me choke. As are some of the connection fees that I know help them to manage their operational budget. So I don't have the solution for it, but I think that as a group, we can figure out what that is.
Thanks, Mary. Yeah, Jake.
What is the connection fee right now for downtown, and what would a comparable town nearby be? No, but like.
Oh, I chuckle because I think it's a complicated formula, right? That depends on a lot of different factors.
If Lee Harris is
Yeah.
on and listening,
Yes.
he can answer those questions. He gives us those answers at these meetings. If you think that I can keep them in my head, I confess I cannot.
Yeah, it's complicated, I think is the answer, but Lee certainly
An
has.
example, like, this business was trying to do it, and it was
Yeah. Well, I've heard.
10,000, 20,000?
I've heard
What's the number?
I mean, for the larger developments that are going on around town, I've heard numbers like $150,000, $250,000.
What's a larger development?
LLB,
Multiple
144
condo buildings,
units out
multiple
on.
apartment buildings, like
Desert Road.
large.
What's multiple? Are we talking
100.
30,
Like-
100? Okay, so it's 100, so it's about $1,000 a unit?
No,
No, it's,
much more than that.
Well, we just said 150, 100,000 for 100
Hey,
units?
Lee,
so-
Yeah.
Lee's on here, aren't you? Lee?
are we getting
Can't get
into?
Lee
what-
over to be
Why do you want to know
analyst.
that?
what-
I don't need to know right this second, I just want to know the
Yeah,
answer.
we have-
And I do think that's part of the evaluation overall, with looking at expenses of what are the expenses that are needed, what is being done by ratepayers, what's being done by the hookup fees or connection fees, what's needed for the longer term. So I think, the fees that have been used, Lee can talk about this, for the connection fees have been used for operational support.
I think we ought to move forward with establishing this group to continue, number one, and we got a lot on our plates now between the end of budget season, so maybe this could be a fall where we dig into the weeds a little bit more, or summer or something. But I think it's crucial that we continue to try to work on collaborations, try to lower maybe some of these costs. I know some businesses that call me, daycare center, it was like $7,000 to connect in, so, it was significant for them to do that. So I think we should move forward with it, and
Yeah, Chip.
Yeah, I agree. I think we should move forward with it. I think you guys are doing a great job. Thank you. And when we look forward, look not just to what we've got going on now, but future growth, because we're going to grow, and that's what we need. And eventually, I don't know how many other people are going to be on there, but there's going to be quite a few if we want the town to grow.
And I think what I would add to this is I'm feeling some desire to act because I have people circling the wagon who want to develop downtown. And if this is a stumbling block, I think I've said this to Ed before, if we lose the housing that we say we want because of this, I just feel like I might lay down and cry in front of you guys. So I think it would be a shame for us to do that. And I think there's a way that we can collectively think about how to make this happen in the right way. So I feel an expediency to this that maybe others don't, but I certainly do.
Yeah, it looks like we've got Lee on board now. If you want to add anything, Lee.
Yeah.
I was a step away. I saw the agenda, and I've been around here for a while, and I just stepped away. So, I've missed the first part of this conversation. I don't know how long you've been talking about sewer stuff.
We said all sorts of great things about you. It's too bad you missed it.
Well,
Yeah.
that's good. Then
Ed
I'll watch
said
the
all kinds of
recording.
good things about
Said
it.
something nice.
Oh, did you?
I'll watch the recording then.
Yeah, there you go.
Two people said something nice.
It was all very positive. There's a general,
Yeah,
I do want to call out that there's a general spirit of collaboration. I think there's a lot of openness to having the discussions. There's probably a bunch of questions that everybody wants to ask. But the last couple of minutes have been around, connection fees and things like that.
Yeah, the one of the the basic issue that we're actually together here and kind of looking for a collaborative way is the connection fee is kind of the catalyst that's brought us to this stage, I think. And where the sewer district, the board is certainly as you know, willing to look at some options. We're not we're not wedded to the fee. We're wedded to the income. I mean, we have two sources of income. You may have already mentioned that in this meeting, but that's one of them. And so we only have two. That's one of them. So we have to be very careful, at the district how we structure whatever happens with that. But I think it's doable if it's not rocket science. It's money. So that's not if we can be pretty creative. So I guess that's why I think that something can be done if there's the will to do it. I've been the general manager for 12 years, and I was the chair of the board prior to that for prior year. So I'm very familiar with the commercial aspect of how sewer impacts and what the history of this has all been. And I can appreciate where FEDC is coming from and where the town is coming from in terms of trying to make sure you deal with the the new changes that business has gone through over the last few years, and how it's going to impact the next few years, how it's going to change downtown. I'm pretty excited about seeing downtown revitalizing in a way that creates a little bit more humanity. And if there's anything the sewer district can do that doesn't jeopardize the financial aspect of the sewer district, certainly I think that we can look at that and move something.
Well, I'll circle back up with Ed and Matt and kind of go through my list of questions and things like that. One thing that's on there that I'll just sort of call out, and Mary, this will be familiar territory to you because I've had this discussion with FEDC a number of times. How do we know we're doing a good job? How do we grade ourselves? What are our peers doing? So that would be an interesting question. Are the connection fees feel really high? Well, high in comparison to what? If we look at neighboring towns, to Jake's point earlier, are we on par with other towns? Are we significantly above? Are we below? I don't know that we have those answers yet. So that's the kind of information I'd be looking for, and I'm sure it's obtainable somehow between FEDC and the sewer district and the committee. So that's the kind of stuff I'd be curious about. Go ahead.
And on that, how much do we need to run it?
Yep.
How many customers do we need to bring that number down, bring that connection fee down, and that monthly fee? I guess that's the other part of the revenue, right? So how many need to bring that down, and what do we do to get there?
Yeah, Darryl.
One of the questions that a couple of constituents brought to me is a facility that was already operating may have been vacant. New business comes in. Then they are also charged another connection fee when, in fact, the facilities didn't change as far as bathrooms or whatever. I think they added one sink. So the one question that has, why is that? And I know that's a revenue servant on the sewer board that comes in there, but is there a way to lessen that impact to help? So that would be something we could have to look at.
Yep, that's another good question, yep. And I think to maybe Chip's point, maybe something new, but I'm curious about the long-term impact of things. It's one thing to say, we've got a big bill to pay, let's help crack that nut and pay that bill, but long-term, what do things look like? How's the planning for the future? And Ed and I had a good conversation about this, and the town kind of does it one way. We save our money in advance so that it's there in the bank when we need to pay for something. Another way to do it is to say, well, let's take out a loan, pay the bill, and then pay it back over the next 10 or 20 years, something like a bond. So there's just two different styles. I don't know that one's right, one's wrong, but I'm curious about the long-term operational plan and fiscal plan of the sewer district if we were to get financially involved. And I'm sure we'd be happy to kind of dive in with, financial analysis stuff if they need help with that. If they don't, that's fine. Yeah, good? So you happy with the direction you have?
I'm
So, Mr.
happy, and I encourage even more.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's raised an issue. I assume Lee was not surprised by anything anybody had as an issue, and certainly those are all things that I think, depending on what the role of the town is viewed as, if you're going to be a huge investor in the plant, then all of these issues are on the table. If you're not, and that's the recommendation, then the sewer district can probably do this on its own with some requests from us. But I guess the point is, until you get into the depth of it, you really don't know what you're going to feel comfortable recommending. But knowing in advance what the issues are likely to be to counselors would be helpful to all of us on this committee. Dan says he'd like to meet with Mary and Matt and I to give us his, and anybody else who has them that wants to meet, or put something in writing to help guide our discussions. I would rather find them out right away than the night I present the alternatives that don't take into consideration your concerns.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you guys for tackling this.
Lee, Sally, do you have any questions of any of us at the council level that you'd like to hear a statement on?
I do, but I'll defer to Sally first if she has something to say.
Looks like she's saying no, Lee.
Yeah, shaking her head.
There are a couple of things. I know that I think last year someone from the the municipal side contacted us and said what kind of projects you've got going, because we have some ARRA money that we've gotten, and one of the things we can do with it is sewer. And I've done a little research on that, and I know that the ARRA money that you received, about $850,000, I don't know what you've done with it, but when we're making application, if the town, the municipal side, when we're making application for monies that are available to us for infrastructure development, if the town is not just shown their support and interest, verbally, but if they, if they've actually committed some money to that bumps us up on the list. It gives you points. There are points to get on a list to get, dollars. We are making applications. This is, what we're doing here is kind of a sidebar to what, the sewer district is doing. But if there is some money available and you're still looking, I know that would be helpful to us. A couple of councilors mentioned, one of you mentioned a long-term plan for sewer district. When I was first elected to the board in the first several years that I was the manager of the board, we were very reactive. We were just trying to get a handle on fixing things. Maintenance had been lax. Daryl, you were with us early in that period, so you have some idea of just what the costs were, what the dangers were You know, I think you were there when we had to spend close to $1 million on the Porter's Landing emergency. You probably weren't there a few years later. We had to spend close to $1 million on the Route 1 Cindy Fish and Chips emergency. Those are bonds that we had to take out that, you know, we had no choice because the money wasn't there. The financial picture wasn't there. Since then, we've managed to put aside some money. That's one of the considerations. You know, the town, you collect from all of the taxpayers, and, you know, fortunately, property has been skyrocketing for years. So it's been kind of easy street to, you know, swell up the coffers for your body. But for our body, we have 1,200 accounts. Well, actually, not quite that. And, you know, less than half of them are business accounts. And it's a struggle to, you know, you can see as just from having this joint meeting is that, you know, the money doesn't come to us easily. And, you know, there's a kind of, when we go for it, there's a kind of a pushback. But, you know, to meet our fiduciary responsibility of, you know, maintaining a town sewer system, which incidentally, and this is a point of education for everybody, is that it isn't just the 1,000, 1,100, 1,200 people that are or accounts that are on the sewer that benefit from this. This is an environmental utility that benefits the entire population, and not just in the town, but, you know, anybody that is connected to the waters of this town. So that's one thing. We have improved it to the point. I think I told this committee that we've managed to save $1 million in the last 4 or 5 years. All of the connection fees that we've done since 2008-9 have gone directly in it, and fortunately through, you know, user fee increases, those connection fees, those individual capacity fees have not been touched. We've been able to save them. You know, even though, you know, the FEDC is, you know, it hurts them in theory. It's what you're saying. We've been able to save them, and they're for infrastructure. They're for meeting increased capacity. So that's kind of the long-term plan that we've put in place. So that's long-term. Short-term, Gerald, you mentioned someone that had to connect and wasn't able to get they had to pay more money even though nothing was changed. That's just not accurate. We don't charge money to people who come in and want to change something if their usage doesn't change. If you've got a business and you're selling clothes, and then you bring in a daycare center, and all of a sudden instead of having, you know, one toilet, and it gets used once in a while, you've got 3 or 4 public toilets and they're used daily. That's an increase in usage. That's how we determine charge. We don't determine charge just because someone takes over a building or takes over a spot, and then we just charge them double, or we increase we charge them again because they're doing that. We don't do that. That's obviously not fair. Probably wouldn't pass the straight face test legally. And, you know, we only charge because there's a state chart that's been worked out through the subsurface wastewater laws that tell us when a new facility comes in or a new business comes in. This is what by state, this is the maximum use per day that they would use, and the sewer district uses those numbers to determine what a capacity fee might be. And in fact, there are several changes of use that we never, we don't do anything. We just say, yeah, you're okay. So I wanted to make that clear, Liz, because that kind of misinformation is, it makes it's not accurate. It makes us look bad.
I'll stop down, Lee, and give you the specifics on it that we can address that. So thank you.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Good.
One last.
Mary, go ahead. Yeah, and Sally, I think we also know that you want to speak as well, but Mary, Sally.
Want me to go next?
Yeah.
Floor is yours.
Yeah, no, I was just going to mention, there are different municipalities that just do a flat rate fee for everybody, whether they're on the system or not. And it's kind of like, people that don't have kids in schools. You're paying taxes to support the schools because it's beneficial. And there's no question that the sewer district is beneficial to the town and the people that are visiting our town and the businesses that are in our town. It's one possibility, despite the fact that people are having to take care of their own leach fields or septic tanks or whatever. But there are municipalities that do assess basically a tax.
That's a good thing to know, and if counselors have opinions on that, you might want to share them with Ed or Matt to bring back to that committee. About how that would
I'm
go.
sure Sally's going to raise that at committee, and we'll discuss it, and, you know, we can figure out how we feel.
Mary, did you want to add something?
Yeah, just final thing. I want to thank Sally and Lee for getting us there. Sally was pretty tenacious with me and saying, please come, please come, please come, as Lee did the same thing too. So I'm glad we did come. I'm glad we are there. I'm glad we are trying to collaborate on it. I think it's the right thing to do for Freeport. And I think the other thing that I would say was sort of what Lee said. We do need a great town capability at getting funds. You know, we were talking about it earlier, about our ability to be able to write grants and get grants is going to be really important in a lot of different areas for us. So I think it's really important that we do develop those capabilities. And this is just one of many we'll have.
One
Okay,
of many,
so
for
without
sure,
ado,
Thank you. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Sally. Thank you, Lee. Thank you,
Thank
Matt
you.
and Ed,
Yeah.
everyone else. So look forward to next, and if you have dates for when you guys are going to meet again, let us know, and we'll make sure to hit you up before then, but.
We didn't know what
Yeah.
result this would be.
Yeah, that's fine.
We've got a
Yeah.
meeting scheduled.
Yeah, I'll chat with you and go over my list. Yeah. All right. We're at the last item on our agenda, which we have scheduled 30 minutes for, and we may hit it, we may not, but we have our finance director, Jessica Malloy, and I don't know how you want to structure this, if you want to, we use the same program that we saw 2 weeks ago, I think.
We've, in the past, stepped through article by article and gone question by question. We've had just people raise their hands with questions. At the meeting 2 weeks ago, I kind of got the impression that the council wanted to maybe not talk about things that seemed certain or that seemed necessary, and maybe talk on some of the things that people had questions of. So for that reason, this is usually a meeting where we would bring every department head to sit back there to answer questions from the council. This year, we're responding to the request from the council that you will tell us if there's something you need more detail on, so we can drag the relevant department head here for that meeting at the next council meeting, the last workshop that we'd have, or the last kind of item for action last opportunity for action on it. So if you identify something tonight and you need, direct testimony from the department head, please let Jessica and I know, and we'll make sure they're here at your next meeting. But the reason they're not here today is because we got feedback at the last meeting, don't drag them here unless we need to see them. So, which I think everyone appreciated. So thank you for all the counselors who felt that way.
And our next meeting on April 5th, we have a public hearing on this capital program, and then the meeting following that on April 19th, we're due to adopt the capital program. Do I have that right?
Yes.
So we have 2 more meetings, we're going to talk about this same program. And the program is our 5-year plan on how we think we're going to spend money, capital money, over the next 5 years. It's not necessarily a reflection of allocating or appropriating that money.
Correct. This is not the appropriation of the funds. This is just adopting the plan.
Got it. So, fire away. Counselor Fournier first, then Counselor Bradley.
Got several questions, and I met with Jessica last week, I guess it was. That was very helpful. One question that I had was on the SCBA's in the fire department. They are a time-sensitive item where they have to be replaced. And those were bought initially with a federal grant. And the question I had, could they be held off for a year and maybe be eligible for another grant? And that would be something, we missed it this year, but I don't know if they could be done till next year. So
Yeah, so I did follow up and ask that question. The timeframe of these, they expire by the end of this year. So the grant period doesn't open or would not get awarded if we were even eligible until spring of 2023. So we would be beyond the expiration of those bottles. So I did follow up on that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Then I also visited Public Works, and I'm 100% behind the lift that they work on the trucks. Matter of fact, I think the plan they have now is to go with actually individual jacks that will go underneath the wheels. It can be moved from one building to the other side, so that makes all kinds of sense. The only question I have on Public Works is when I looked at the plow gear and the particular truck they're replacing has a stainless steel dump body. Those looked in awesome shape. I asked the mechanic, they weren't bent, they weren't cracked, they're well-maintained. Why can't we just buy a chassis? And what I'm saying is we buy the chassis and remount the dump body and remount the plow gear. The mechanic thought that, we maybe could get 2 rounds. I love the idea of buying stainless steel bodies. That makes all kinds of sense in the world.
Right.
But I think we could probably get maybe 2 or 3 chassis underneath that equipment instead of buying all new equipment every year. So that would be one question.
I would just answer that, yeah, I love the idea if it works. I would point out that the stainless bodies already allow us to get longer lifespan out of the chassis. Actually, the limiting factor used to be the bodies. If you remember when we had, we had carbon steel bodies or whatever, they would rust through in about 6 years. They look good after 8 to 10 years now. So I don't know if that we'd get 16 years out of them, 2 chassis out of them, but
I'm not suggesting 2.
we can
but
talk with Public Works for sure, yeah.
I would like to maybe try a sample of 1 truck this year, and if we could get into replacing chassis. One of the issues that I heard was the power plant was kind of weak, in that particular truck, so maybe, go with a good power plant and see if, we could reuse that. That would maybe
We'll
give us
do,
an opportunity.
we'll do some further conversations with that before your next meeting, for
Yep.
sure. Yep.
So just to interject, you'll have to forgive me with the language because I am not a mechanic. I'm not familiar with all the components of a vehicle. But my understanding is that when you say to replace the chassis, you're talking like the cab.
It would be the cab, the engine, the
Yeah.
back of the truck. What we wouldn't be replacing was the dump body.
The dump body
and the
and-
sander, which
yeah.
looked in really good shape, or what we call the plow gear. That
Yeah.
would be the wing and all the mounting equipment and everything.
Okay, so I do know that there are, and I don't know, I'm trying to recall my conversations with Earl. I know there are a few more issues that aren't necessarily, I don't want to say visible because they're visible, but they're not like glaring, I guess. I think there's something with like the, I don't know if it's called the exhaust, but like the pipes that go up the side. And so there may be a few other glaring issues that we're bumping this vehicle up to be replaced, but I agree with Peter. We can certainly have further conversations with Earl to see what some options may be.
Thank you.
I know that was the reason we went to the more expensive stainless bodies, right around when I started here, probably 8 or
Yeah.
9 years ago. We moved from, they were just using steel bodies to stainless, and because they'd have to swap out the body, the actual dump body, over the, one chassis would get 8 years, 6 years, and the dump body wouldn't make it that long. So
Right.
I think that's a very wise choice to go stainless. Anything along that line makes a lot of sense.
but we'll see maybe what the excess lifespan after these trucks go away that they estimate there is still on those.
Yeah.
If it would make halfway through another chassis, that would make sense to me. If it would only make it a few more years, it wouldn't make sense, so.
Thank you.
You don't want to be swapping it like 3 times when you have the
No,
truck.
I would hope, I would like to see another whole cycle life of the chassis, which you're saying is 8 years, and I think that's the key question.
Or if you can get halfway through a third one and
whatever,
get 2
yeah.
dump bodies for 3 chassis or something like that over, we're starting to talk about 20-year planning here. That's pretty big stuff, 24 years lifespan right now in
But,
vehicles. so.
that's a significant savings if we can
Yep.
do that, and that makes a lot of sense.
Just another proof that buying the cheapest item doesn't always save you money in the long run.
Then, the other question I've got is on the landfill. They're looking to buy a tractor. So I guess the question I have is, some of the justifications for that. I know we have several tractors around between Public Works and building maintenance or whatever. So if they're bush hogging or whatever, do we have another tractor that's available? I think currently we contract it out. So I guess, I just would like a little more information on why we need another tractor up there. That's all I have. Thank you.
Council Bradley?
Hi, Jess. A couple sort of questions so I understand this document a little better.
Sure.
Could you tell me why under the initial, on page 1, where you collect the council-approved items for 2022, you don't have a number in there for fire?
There was no capital appropriation last year for fire.
So when it says projection, that doesn't mean appropriation.
The FY '22 should say council approved.
It's the FY '22 projection of what we would need in FY '23, just like right now we're projecting out
Oh, am I
what we
looking at
will
the
need
wrong-
in FY '24, '25, and '26.
Yeah, that's an indicator of how close our estimate from last year. So the FY '22 projection would be the second year on last year's plan. So the first year turned into last year's capital budget, and the second year is that FY '22 projection. So it lets you, that's kind of you can evaluate how close we got last year on our estimates and whether.
So it was not an oversight, it was simply that we didn't approve anything for fire last year.
Yeah, there were no requests. Or there was nothing that ended up on the final plan for that year, for year 1. Yep.
So then my second question is, with respect to how to think about the reserve balances that are reported, my understanding is those are the balances in those accounts as of the 31st of this year, of last year.
Of December,
2021. If I took the amount the manager proposed and assumed that the council approved it, and subtracted that from the reserve balance, would that be the reserve balance that projected it in December 31st of 2022?
With
Mostly.
the exception that we typically appropriate funds to go into the reserves to help build this back up. So like when there's savings or when there's excess fund balance, that I would.
It could be higher, but it won't
correct.
be lower probably.
Shouldn't be lower.
Theoretically, it shouldn't be lower unless the market tanks and we start having money taken from us instead of earning it.
And then really as I went through I was sort of looking, focused on, thinking about what I'm hearing from the downtown process and wondering whether the capital budget reflected any thinking about how that might change if, say, the principal group recommendations are adopted. Did you guys go through anything like that process?
It's intentionally silent on that, with the understanding that it's intentionally silent, that we haven't seen any financial estimates or incorporated. I would say the one thing that's in there is the Mallet Drive reconstruction, revisioning, reimagining of Mallet Drive.
Right.
Maybe we'll call it Mallet Boulevard. We'll just start referring to it that way. That was on the table before any of the downtown visioning process, but
it's not the boulevard part, it's the reconstruction of the road.
no, it's a substantial increase in, landscaping work and what
In
the
scope.
actual outcome of that might be. It's substantially higher than if you were just going to put a shim coat of pavement down. Yes.
Are there any other items in the capital budget that could be viewed as money available to accomplish downtown goals?
Bandstand.
Is there a bandstand number in here?
Yep. There's stuff on the 20-year plan that doesn't make it into the 5-year plan for a lot of the, well, that wouldn't be the downtown stuff, though. That's the connectivity, Connect Freeport,
Correct.
Route 1 South, maybe potentially off-road bike path.
Correct.
Could you just put earmark a couple, all of the things you think might have funds that might have applicability to you don't have to do it this minute, but before we're through the process. So those of us who are thinking about where money comes from could have reference to the capital budget. And one thing that I know we do it and we've done it regularly, which is the Concord Gully Brook Improvement Fund, I'll call it. It's $25,000 a year, right? I don't understand the relationship between what we do and what Bean to do with the TIF money that and I don't know if you've discussed that with them, but my impression is that either as part of downtown or just as part of improving the quality of the environment in our town, that there's a time frame that Beans has in mind, and we have in mind for Beans when we gave them the TIF, that is, I would hope, encourage us to spend more than $25,000 a year in conjunction with that. I don't really know what I'm talking about. I mean, I'll say that. But I think that that's supposed to be a joint Beans, TIF, town effort. And at $25,000 a year, I don't think we can keep pace to what I think they said they would do. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but could we just sort of get a report on what the relationship is between
Yep.
our Concord Gully Brook and theirs?
Yeah, I can explain a pretty big picture. I think that might help. I'll use the phrase, the number 9 million, it's plus or minus. That's my recollection from almost 2 years ago now, the discussion, but approximately that 8 point something to 9 million that is set aside, that will be TIF revenue generated by the taxes on their new buildings that they're constructing, that will be put back into the district to fund stormwater improvements with their new developments that they're doing. So most of that is going to be parking lot work and detention and things like that that they've actually, I believe they've already gone through site plan approval for that. So that's work that they are doing on their 5 parcels. It's really 2 of the 5 parcels that are right there. It's essentially the parking lots that are on the banks of the Concord Gully Brook that run right down into there. That's where the majority of that, like, immediate stormwater hit goes into Concord Gully Brook. So everything that's in I'll call it the project fund for the company from the TIF, the proceeds of the TIF in that $9 million bundle, works on their, essentially 2 of those parcels where a lot of that development is taking place. There's money that is generated in the TIF, a smaller amount at the beginning, but a larger amount at the end that goes into the town project, the town TIF project account. There's going to be some money into it starting next fall, and some money will go to LL Bean starting next fall for the work that they've already completed. That money, one of the approved uses that the previous council, earmarked for those potential funds, in addition to bike paths and economic development and all kinds of creative economy things that we talked about, is stormwater improvements. So the funding source there are multiple funding sources for what we're going to do for Concord Gully Brook improvements. The $25,000 that you see is just coming from town reserves that already existed prior to the TIF. There will be other sources available, including the TIF, to increase that amount each year if the council so chooses. The intent.
Could I have a copy of the TIF
Sure.
document? Because I don't remember. My recollection is, in addition to all the stormwater improvement, there was going to be a specific amount of funding to go down and start rehabbing Concord Gully Brook, sort of the same way we are with our $25,000. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but.
Yeah, I think there was discussion about that initially, but a lot of that, there were some discussion of offsite improvements that came out of the TIF at the request of the previous council.
Yeah, I think the gist is we gave them a pile of money to do work on their site, and I think it felt weird, if I remember it right, to ask them to work on our brook. If it's town property, we said, well, instead of giving you the money to fix our brook, why don't we just keep the money and we'll fix the brook? There's no point in having you fix the brook.
There was
We just won't give you
convers-
as much money, we'll take that money back. and we'll fix it.
I'll get all nervous if we go back to that discussion, but so let's not. But
There was-
I'd like to see what it said.
There was
Fine,
conversation about, like, say, this isn't the right number, but instead of 9 million, having the TIF agreement be 10 million and having $1 million of that be set aside for work in the brook. Those weren't the right numbers, but
Right.
I think you're right. At that point in time, the council said, no, let's take the $1 million out. Let's put one of the allowable uses of the town money of the proceeds to be Concord Gully Brook, and we can decide if that's a priority at that future time.
Jake?
I think that our town engineer also mentioned that, this is a project that's going to take decades, and that throwing more money at it now wouldn't significantly improve anything. Right? Like, it's going to,
Wouldn't reduce
you
the
can
time.
keep throwing it, but you need to throw money at it gradually over time to really make the improvement, is how I remember the conversation.
Or do
It's
it
not
all
like
at
a-
once.
It's not like a $5 million project. It's a series of, like, stream bed rehabs and things like that. He's working on $50,000 project here, a $25,000 project here, things like that.
We all have our own recollections. I'd just like to see what the TIF document said, and if it says what you said it says, then I go to sleep again.
Hope it's close.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, then you can come and yell at me.
Sleep either way.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to dive in? Yeah.
The other area is the comprehensive plan improvements, and I really would like to have Public Works give a detailed cost analysis of what we spend on the Burnett Road per year.
I've got it.
And it's probably, and that, did that include grading and all that stuff? Peter, thank you very much.
We've
It's
got
probably
it.
gonna
I'll talk,
scare us.
I just got it the other day. We'll talk offline before the next
Thank
council
you,
meeting. Yep.
because I think we're down there every year. We grade it every year.
I'll give you the 30,000-foot overview. It doesn't cost us as much to maintain the dirt road over a 20-year period as paving it would. You know, we get 15 years before you have to worry about maintenance of paving, probably 20 years before you have to repave it. But it is maybe half, maybe two-thirds of the amount that we spend on doing the regrading. Now, that's like manpower and trucks and all that, gas, dirt included, so it's a pretty good estimate. It doesn't account for kind of the intangible things like runoff, degradation of abutting property, so
Right.
you'd have to put some value on if it cost, I'm just gonna throw out round numbers, if over a 20-year period, we do $200,000 worth of maintenance on a dirt road versus $320,000 to pave it, those numbers are close but not exact. What's that $120,000 difference? You may think that it's worth it. Anyone may think that it's worth it because it does more than $120,000 in benefit to abutting property owners, to the environment, to the ocean, things like that. So it's not going to be just a dollars to dollars. There's kind of that intangible value of the other benefits of not living on a dirt road or not having runoff or things like that, so.
And the other factor I think we need to take a look at with the significant increase in infrastructure that Wolfsnick Farm's doing over the next years, the traffic is going to increase exponentially, which is great. We want people to use our facilities and stuff like that. So I think we really need to take a hard look at what we're doing down there. Thank you, Peter.
We'll look at, I can meet with you and look over those numbers before the next council meeting if you'd like.
I got a few things, none of which require a long discussion, but probably just more for follow-up for the next meeting. FEDC, we talked about that they hired somebody who was more expensive than the last hire, and they were gonna request more money, and I think Mary requested that, but I didn't see it updated, so is that something we can update for the next meeting?
You had
Yes.
you had a conversation, right, with Mary about that, Jessica?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Similarly, I know Caroline was kind of hinting that she might need more money if we decide to tackle all these ordinances and design review and things like that, which I think we'll get into tomorrow night at another workshop. So I don't know if it's a done deal, but.
Well, I think a lot of that will go into, yes, I agree with her 100%. I think that that's going to need to go into the operating budget because those are going to be like consulting fees and, you know,
All right.
they'd probably be recurring more than one time because I think that,
Good enough.
you know,
That's fine.
expense we might see over 3 years as opposed to 1 year or something like that.
And this, I think you answered it, but I just want to reiterate, because I've asked this a bunch of times, and I think we're all on the same page, but when we come back and get the work back from the principal group, and they say, here's 35 projects, and we at the council say, hey, these are 2 we really want to do next year, all the stuff that we approve on May 19th.
Yep.
April 19th.
Yep.
This plan, can we go back and change it and say, hey, we've got new information, now we want to add stuff to 2023?
Sure.
Yeah, so your vote on April 19th is just the adoption of what we have for a plan.
Yep.
The vote that you do in June is for the physical appropriation of year 1 of the plan. So, you know, if it comes that you want something added into years 2 through 5 of this plan, just, at this point, all you have to do is let me know and we would add it in.
But if we come back with something in years 2, 3, 4, and 5 after April 19th,
Yeah, we wouldn't do anything until next year on those.
Yeah, I would just make the note and put it into next year's capital plan for that consideration.
Ed?
Continuation of that question, if it's something that you wanted to add into next year's capital budget, what's the latest date you can suggest that change?
Well, for the
mid-June of-
appropriation in June, yeah, the year 1.
15 months from now.
No, if well, I'll be specific. I know there's a request coming in for a TIF, small TIF support for the arts and culture. I just know it's coming. I've heard about it. So it's not here. Probably because you haven't gotten it, my guess is. But it's days away.
You're talking about money to be spent between this summer and next summer?
Yes.
Mid-June, right, is the deadline for that?
If you wanted to add it into the appropriation that you do.
You want to spend the
yes.
money on July 1, your last chance to approve that as a council to make a last-minute, last-ditch amendment would be the second meeting in June, unless you call the special meeting.
Is there any disadvantage to, say, the Arts and Cultural Alliance to not have that request in by a certain time? That's what I'm sort of trying to get at.
Yeah, I mean, the disadvantage is it doesn't get discussed during the capital process and into the plan. So typically, and what I've talked about before with the groups is that, this is a 5-year plan. My edict to the department heads is try not to give me a year one change in the plan, because my expectation is that you guys see this, or all of you see this, for 5 years before we are physically making the appropriation.
Or at least
so that
2
you
and
know
3,
what we're
right.
reserving for, and we can build and save and get a return on it, right? So I try not to have department heads give me year one changes, and you can probably ask any one of them, and they will tell you that I continually remove their year one requests and put it at least into year 2, so that you see it at least a year before
You
we
actually
make
need
the
the money.
appropriation. So from a equity standpoint, I would say that's the difficulty I have when I get outside requests after the plan is compiled, because then that's on top of everything that I've had to ask the department heads to give and dwindle out for them. Like the department heads aren't getting all their year one requests, because I try not to do that.
I understand,
So-
that's reasonable. I guess I just ask us to keep in mind that some of these projects have no history, that they are learning on the fly what their needs are. We have substantial investments, for instance, in Meeting House Arts, and they've got some stress. And so they didn't know about it last year. They couldn't have put it in last year. They're feeling it now. Whether you're going to give it to them or not, I don't know. But I just hope that they are not disadvantaged because, COVID and all those things happened to them over, the last 5 months, and they're now coming to roost in their budget process.
Right. I would say the disadvantage would be that you guys are having the discussion on the plan as a whole now, and then it becomes an additional decision of, with the reserve dollars being the way they are we willing to give up something else to, award a committee request, or vice versa? You know what I mean? Are we going to forego a committee request because we've already, established a level? And it's all at the board level, so, yeah.
I'll reframe that in a positive light, and this is what I've told groups, ACAP and other groups before. Instead of the reason not to do it, Jessica's already laid out several good ones not to do something. The reason to get it in January, February, and this is to anybody that's making a capital request in the future, is that if it gets in this plan, there's no question that that's our year one budget that we submit, that Jessica and I submit to you
Right.
for, in a month from now, you'll see it. Whatever you vote in here is going to get into the capital budget for next year. So if you can make it through the capital planning process and being hashed over and grilled by all the counselors about, whether the stainless steel bodies are sufficient or not, and you can make it through that gauntlet, you're getting into the budget.
Okay.
So that's why.
When does a request from ACAP have to be on this table to get in this plan?
January.
Well, to get in the plan that's presented, it would have to be in January, but for you to vote on it, it's the last date of so if you want to amend it
Correct.
on April 19th, you can do that.
So somewhere between now and the 19th, hopefully the
If it-
sooner
yep.
the better, they have to have it in.
Best to have it in the one that we transmit to you,
I get it.
but it's second best to have it in the one that you approve on April 19th, and it's
Got it.
third
Thanks.
best and the last opportunity to get it in the budget by June 15th or whatever that date is. So-
Yep.
I got 2 more. Body cams is something that kind of comes up as a discussion item
Yes.
all the time.
Yep.
I know that they haven't yet set a policy on it, but I know it's something in discussion. Is that just something we kind of hold off, and then once they set a policy and decide they want to do it, then we discuss it for next year?
Yes.
So, until there's something there to discuss, there's no point in setting aside money, because we don't know if we're going to do it yet.
Correct.
If there's some indication, like if there was an indication, a 7-0 vote from the council that you're going to do this by next year,
Yeah,
we'd
which we don't have yet.
find something in there. I don't.
I just know it's becoming more popular, and I know
Yeah,
that they've discussed
I
it.
don't know that
and-
there's necessarily opposition to it. I just know there
Yeah,
hasn't
yeah.
been an affirmative push to go in that direction. Yep.
And then the last thing I have is just a question on the timing. So, of the two TIFs, the downtown TIF and the Concord Gully Brook TIF, how much longer does the downtown TIF continue to kind of provide revenue? And then when does the Concord Gully Brook start to provide revenue?
So the downtown TIF is good for another 5 years, I believe it is. Yeah, I think it's another 5 years, if I recall correctly. And the Concord Gully will start to have
This fall.
some, what, I'm sorry?
This fall.
Yeah.
There will be a positive there will be a positive increment this year. We just talked about that with
Do you know the amount of that increment in the first year?
It's not much. It
Yeah,
might generate-
not much the first year, but I don't have a value for you yet. They're still working on that, all that in assessing.
I've got a rough.
It's kind of backloaded, right? We get a smaller sliver up front, and then we get more.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
we get a
more
medium
towards the end.
sliver.
Yeah, that's right.
We get a medium
Fatter
sliver
return.
for like 2 more years or 3
Yeah.
more years, and then we get very little. It's kind of like a
Oh, like sort of hourglass.
Bell curve.
bracket, yeah. And we get very little for 10 or 15 years in the middle, and then we get a lot on the back end.
Yeah, on the back end, but that's 10 years-ish. It depends on how.
10 to 15,
Yeah.
depending on what the valuation. I do want to say that,
We get some this fall.
well, they're not completely done with the building. I know that the valuation above the OAV, so the frozen assessed value for when the district was created, there will be a positive in the 10 million plus range this year for what they've already completed. So it'll generate a couple $100,000. That's going to get split up between the town project fund, and a lot of that will go to costs that LLBN is already certified and they're already payable under the agreement, so.
Yeah.
And this is to do with the whole capital budget. It'll probably be done later on the 19th. My question is, I think we currently look at funding from the revenues for the capital budget for like 3 years. I think that's what he was explaining to me when we met. So I'm concerned with that. I would like to see us with a capital budget with reserves, that would look at a 5-year expenditure coming out. So when we have big expenditures down the road, like I look at a ladder truck or something else, that we're not maybe forced to go to bonding or whatever. There's been a long, long history, and Ed will remember many years ago.
Smiling because this,
Yep.
you're even,
So, but
we're thinking when we need it.
I don't know if that's, so I'd like to have that discussion. Are we better off, and you brought up, Mr. Chairman, maybe there's 2 trains of thought. Bonding is one, the other one, you have the money in the bank like we do at home and get it. I don't know, but hopefully we can discuss that down the road while
We do a 5-year plan, right? That's what
well,
we do.
but it's not funded.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it becomes funded with
I mean,
what we
this is
have
the
here.
conversation that it's been going on for a couple of years about how conservative we are in maintaining reserve accounts.
It's mostly funded, yeah, I would say that. Based on the numbers, we looked at this a couple weeks ago, right, Ed, that there was mostly,
But we should go through that.
Well, yeah, so I'd like to dig into, not tonight, but I'd like to have it, yeah, we're definitely that's me, being the conservative guy, I'm on that, but I'd like to research that. Thank you.
well, some of your fellow counselors would like not to over-reserve, so this is a great political debate, so.
I've had it for the last 2 years. I lost. I got
Yeah,
nailed.
you got some new advocates, maybe. Or any other?
Oh, he's going in the other direction than you, Ed, I think, so. Yeah.
Surprised. But I know.
Any other capital program discussion questions for Jessica before we see her again in 2 weeks for a public hearing on the same topic?
With some research on tractors and truck chassis
some
and fund balances and stuff like that, so, yep.
Cool. All right, I think we did it in 30 minutes. Not bad.
Pretty good.
Pretty impressive.
Move adjourned.
I just want to do a couple things on this. Thank you
You're welcome. Thank you.
for the presentation and all the work that went into it. It's a long road to get here, and thanks for sticking around so late.
Yeah.
Before we run away, just a couple of things I want to tweak on our little plan here at the end, so that Chris has a note, and I don't want to do it without keeping you guys all in the loop. I think that number 8 and number 13 are duplicates, right? They both talk about codes and permitting processes.
Yeah, let's get rid of 13,
Yep.
because that's less detailed.
Yep. And when you get rid of it, I wouldn't renumber the stuff under it. I would just cross it out and say duplicate of above so that numbers don't change. And then the number 11, the sewer district workshop, I would just tweak that and say maybe explore collaboration with sewer district, because it's not just a one-time workshop that you want to have. It's an ongoing discussion, right? Right now, it just says sewer district workshop. I feel like we could cross that off because we had the workshop.
Let's call it sewer district committee work.
Yeah, sewer district committee work. And you could put Ed and Matt's name next to that one.
Can I suggest we cross off 14 because we've had the discussion and now all that's left is your action and that'll resolve it one way or the other. We have
You want
no
to cross
further-
that one off at the next meeting?
Well, we have no further work to do on it. It's already going to
Yeah,
go in
okay.
front of you next
Cross off 14, yeah.
next week.
What is, I can't.
Yeah.
Schiller's ordinance review.
I've got a, you got, and then you could put my name next to number 12. And I think that's the only thing I had.
That's the broader discussion as well as fossil fuel.
Yes, and investment policy, and investment policy in general, yep.
Is the second half of number 12 a duplicate of number 5? Determine how much is reasonable to keep in reserve accounts? No, it's not.
No, that's
No,
different.
never mind.
Yep, that's the question that.
Because one is how,
Daryl just asked, yep.
12 is how it's invested.
Right.
5 is
How much to invest?
how much we keep aside. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, well, number 7 and
7
5 are
is a
similar.
duplicate of 5, though.
Yep.
Chris, are you caught up down there, Chris?
You can take me off 5.
Yeah,
Okay,
why don't
can
we
we-
cross out 5 and just leave 7?
Yeah, take me off
Yep.
5.
Yeah, just cross out 5, the whole thing. Cool, we're making progress.
I think
We crossed off like 4 things.
Ed has an opinion on 5, and Daryl also has an opinion
No,
on
I've
7.
given up. I really just, I'll
You
announce
had
it.
an opinion at the end of the discussion on 5 that we had, though.
I can't hear you.
I said you had an opinion at the end of the discussion we had on 5, though.
I still have an opinion that isn't the same as what the council's opinion is, but you don't always get your opinion, right? And there's no sense in beating your head against a dead wall.
Feels good when you stop.
Yeah.
It was all on the wrong end of that. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
All right, if there are no other changes, you else want to make any other motions for the evening?
Motion to adjourn?
That's a fine motion to make. Anybody second that one?
Well,
All right, Lawrence and Fournier, any, all up in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. I can use my gavel.
Oh.
9:03.
Is Meeting House Arts going to ask for more money?
Easy there.